get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. What's up, guys? Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. Follow me on Twitter if you don't already, at People's_Pundit. I'm a little out of breath, a little racing. It's October 15th, Thursday. Don't forget to like the page, People's Pundit Daily on Facebook, and subscribe to the People's Pundit Daily YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell. We'll let you know when we're about to go live. All right. So, special guest today, since by popular request, all right, we have Barnes coming on to discuss the results of the Pennsylvania poll, all right, and we'll analyze them a little bit more in detail, and then we'll preview Arizona, which we're going to build pretty much a little bit on the show probably, if we do that, and there's some things, of course, that's tailored uniquely to Arizona. Maybe we'll ask that too. But a couple of interesting things I want to talk about with the polling we've done for the public polling project thus far. All right. I know Trump is in Greenville today, and there's this. It's funny because it's a Subaru dealership I went to. Right. Great kid I met over there, and he's like dying to go to a Trump rally. And I told him I take him to one every time Trump comes. I'm busy. I got to work, and I feel bad. So I got to get him at one of these rallies before the end of this cycle. We're racing to an end really close. Really interested. Wanted to come over and see how polling's done. Like, how is it done? Right. Up close and personal. So pretty interesting stuff. But few things I want to talk about in the polling data. Barnes will be here in about 5 or 10 minutes or so. He said about 10 after 10. So that means usually, 10, like 15 after. Sorry, Robert, but it's true. All right. And he asked me to upload a map. He wanted to talk specifically comparing some of these maps that we have seen in Rust Belt polling, like from the New York Times, for instance. He wants to compare them with some and go over them. So, and compare them to what we have found. Because let me tell you, folks, a big part of why we wanted to poll Pennsylvania, and we polled for the Epoch Times, we polled Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, Iowa, right? And did I miss any 6 states? Minnesota, right? I think I got them. And in all of these, we did not find a lot of what some of these other people are finding. Not some of these other people. I mean, look, the New York Times is as they always do, leading the way, and then people are following, which is why you see now the NBC News poll has now admitted they will not move to a likely voter model. They will stay registered voters, which they found some Biden plus, I think it was 50 in their last one. All right. And that is a dereliction of duty. They know it. And it's part of your job to project what the electorate will be. I will tell you right now, and I usually don't resort to criticizing other people like this, but I will do it because it is fair. They asked for it. You are either a coward who is afraid to attempt to project the electorate, and what they're doing is caving. So if it's this giant registered voter pool, then they can kind of say they were right or wrong either way, right? So if this 30% new voter electorate doesn't show up, then they can say, well, we were just polling on the hypothetical that it would. And if it would have, then we would have been right and Biden would have won and, blah, blah, blah. That's what they intend to do. And then if they're right and some act of God, there is 165 million voters, then they can claim that they were right? So that's what they're doing. So you're either a coward who doesn't have the sack to do your job and project the electorate, or you're corrupt and you're attempting to make it look better for Biden. But there is no modern election where you can show me a major media organization sticking only with registered voters up until the time of the election. This is yet another first that we are seeing in the era of Donald Trump that is hurting our profession. And you're doing not only a disservice to it, you're a disgrace to it. And you should be shamed out of the industry. And that's where we stand. I was watching, somebody had sent me a video. I will be on with, I'll be on Cotto Gottfried on Monday. All right. Or at least the interviews Monday. I'll let you know when we're going on. But somebody had sent me a video with him. I guess interviewing Patrick Basham of Democracy Institute again. And I thank you, Patrick, for your kind words. But I am sorry that you have to be subjected to years of what I have been subjected to, which is unprofessional, unwarranted smears from people who are lazy and insecure, right? So I think he put it very well. But he also said something else that I thought was a great way to articulate this, because it's true. So again, like I told you guys, I said it in my own way the other day. We are supposed to believe that Joe Biden is going to have a bigger victory over Donald Trump, right? The strongest Republican candidate in 4 decades. He is. You can't even say Poppy Bush was as strong as Donald Trump, because Poppy Bush did not do it. Poppy Bush won, and he won areas of the Rust Belt on the goodwill of voters to Ronald Reagan. He didn't do it on his own. Bob Dole, God bless him, was a horrible Republican candidate. And John McCain was probably worse because he at least was running on his own 2 feet. Bob Dole had to deal with an incumbent president, and it's very difficult to beat an incumbent president, right? So that leaves John McCain the worst, weakest, most terrible Republican candidate in the modern era. We're against the best Democratic candidate in the modern era. We're supposed to believe, okay, that Joe Biden, who failed twice to run for president and only won, let's face it, because of Barack Obama this time, he was going down. If you know what happened behind the scenes, you know it's true. Joe Biden was going down. Bernie Sanders was going to be the nominee. If it wasn't for Barack Obama on speed dial for 3 days, Joe Biden was finished. He would not be the Democratic nominee right now. So we're supposed to believe Joe Biden is going to defeat the strongest Republican candidate in 4 decades, up until Ronald Reagan, by a larger margin than Barack Obama defeated the worst Republican candidate in 4 decades. Think about that for a second. And I would submit, and Patrick said something that I'm going to give him a shout out here for, the Democratic nominee for president in 2020 could be Jesus Christ. He is right. And they still wouldn't beat Donald Trump by these margins, 15, 16 points. Because we simply don't have that kind of an electorate in this country anymore. Gone are the days, 25% of the Democratic Party crossing over and voting for Ronald Reagan. Gone are the days of 18% of the Republican Party crossing over and voting for Barack Obama. That is over. Over. Not at the presidential level, or at least it's over for right now. If it was true, then we would have saw red flags in the Republican primary. Instead, what we saw was Donald Trump match and surpass prior very strong Republican candidates in vote share and total votes in the primary. New Hampshire folks and those who are smart and do political prognostication know this. New Hampshire is the state that will let you know if an incumbent president has a problem, has a base problem. What do I mean by that? That is the state where you will lose 40, 50% of your base in the primary. And instead, with a full-on, fully backed financially and on the ground effort, never Trump effort by state officials, by local officials, by national figures, to use New Hampshire as an example of where Trump is going to be defeated. He has a base problem. Bill Weld's going to get a lot of votes. Joe, the deadbeat dad, is going to get a lot of votes. Instead, Donald Trump surpassed Ronald Reagan. He was the record. In Iowa, where they like to see people up close and personal, they almost never caucus for incumbents. They barely cast any caucus goers, barely show up. They didn't for Barack Obama. Not many. And yet he won re-election handily. We saw an ungodly, unheard of number of Republican caucus goers show up to cast their vote for the president. And Joe Biden, by the way, placed fourth. And turnout was abysmal. In New Hampshire, turnout for Democrats again was abysmal. Bernie Sanders barely, because he didn't get some of the voters out. He just didn't. These younger voters just did not show up. They did not show up. So the Bernie plus 20s looked like fools. And by the way, there were plenty of Iowa Biden plus good whatever. And that did not happen. In Nevada, Data for Progress was all alone in projecting that Bernie would do better because he was going to win a voting bloc that everyone thought Joe Biden was going to win going away. And he took a lot of the black vote, the black caucus goers. All right, so let's not pretend like there aren't indicators screwing up badly right now, like polling, and those that are time-tested and true not screwing up. I mean, it is the case. That is the reality, folks. So I'm previewing this because when Barnes hops on here, we're going to take a look at some of these maps and explain to you where in 2016 these states flipped that we're going to look at. All right. We're going to look directly at these counties where the media is saying that these counties go. And part of the idea behind the public polling project and why I was dying to get into Pennsylvania was to find out whether or not there was this change that would cause some of these areas to go. All right. And in truth, it simply did not happen. It simply did not happen. We did not find the white working class going for Joe Biden, which is what it would take to flip some of these counties that we're going to look at today. Not he would need to close the gap. That's not good enough. He would need to flip them, which is what some of these polls are suggesting they're doing. And again, I just want to say, again, I thank people for their kind words, and I'm sorry you have to be subjected to what we're subjected to here in this country, which is a grossly corrupt and insecure media who wants dominance over everything. And if they were secure in themselves and in their work and in their projections, then we simply would not see this level of vitriol going after people who have descending takes. And by the way, as I said yesterday, the dissenters this year who are saying, generally, what is the status of the race? We are not headed for a bigger Obama-McCain landslide. That is not the state of the race right now. Coronavirus hurt the president, and it's a race. If coronavirus wasn't even an issue, this would not be a race. And Donald Trump would be running away with this. Why? We know this because we're nesting variables and we are looking at people who are voters that Donald Trump lost or is losing, that he needs to woo or demotivate, whatever it may be, whatever their strategy they decided to be on. They are coronavirus voters. Minus coronavirus, folks, and this is not a race. This is an incumbent landslide. And those of us who actually called the last 2 or 3 cycles correctly are saying this is a competitive race. If they were secure enough, I'm not insecure enough to let, they can go about their business, and every poll should be scrutinized. Every assumption that poll makes should be scrutinized. That is fair and valid. What isn't is the wholesale smear and name calling of people and attacking them on a not a professional, on a personal level, and then into professional. Patrick now knows what it feels like to be smeared without someone even picking up the phone and saying, hey, how did you do this? I'm a little unclear on something. And frankly, I may be dissenting with your point of view. Can you tell me how you got here? I have never, and I'm sure he wouldn't either, I have never denied anybody anything. With the exception of, like I said last week, I am straight reluctant now to give people raw data sets because I frankly think many of them will just take the raw data sets. And smart person, although I'm not sure there are many of them left, a smart person could technically reverse engineer our likely voter model if you had the raw data set. Technically, you could do that. All right. And I'm not willing to have people do that. But again, some of them now are shirking their duties, and we're just not going to poll likely voters. We're not going to try to discern who the electorate is. Did you guys lose me for a second? You did, right? Am I back now? That's crazy. Don't go anywhere if that happens again. That may be that they nicked the line or something out there. We have a lot of construction going on, guys. And sometimes we had the hard line run. It's run 2 here. Sometimes I can hear them out there. It's not some grand conspiracy to boot me off the air. At least I don't think so. But there are times where I see them out there and they, first dig up the sod to lay the damn line and then re-dig it up because they screw something up. And I hear them out there right now. Laura's not with us today to answer the question. Yeah, maybe Big Brother's watching cable cutters from Virginia. No, I think it's just that it's hard to do this kind of construction in this area without bumping into stuff. Like the other day, I really thought they were going to run over the reservoir with the tank, with the giant, basically with the big trucks running it over, Yeah, basically, so there it is. Okay, listen, guys. Nate Silver is not a pollster, all right? He doesn't have internals like a pollster would have internals. But so he can't really release internals. I don't know. He can show, though, a little bit more about his methodology on how the model works. But then you would find out that it's just a poll reading operation. So we really can't do that. All right. And also a couple of things, that some people brought up yesterday. What I was talking about was, there just aren't many. We were talking about West Virginia. And that really kind of dovetails into what I'm going to bring up now. I'd like to look at I added it to the spreadsheet. If you guys didn't see it, I added, people wanted to know, well, what about white, no college, white with college? kind of funny. We did see Trump a little shy in the white no college area in Pennsylvania, but he was doing better than we thought among some with a college degree, which when we looked at it, we think that our Philadelphia County numbers for Trump are probably a little too high. All right. But at the same token, there are plenty of other places where we can see that they're probably a little bit too low. Like, for instance, in Lackawanna, it looked way too liberal. All right. Even in Allegheny County and Bucks County, we talked about that the day that we were releasing the results. Bucks County was way too liberal. Bucks County is not 36% liberal. This state is 25, 26 in the electorate, usually tops, right? And in Bucks County, we were at like 36%, 35% liberal, 37% in Allegheny, which you have Pittsburgh there. So you could expect something a little bit more than that in Allegheny, but not Bucks, right? Not Lackawanna. And in Luzerne, Monroe, we just had Trump thumping Joe Biden. Erie County flipped on the last day. It was about +2 Biden. Donald Trump won that by 2 points. Again, the margin, the sampling margin, when you're looking at smaller subsamples, it's going to get bigger, but the whole entire survey sampling error is 3%. And when you look down into counties, we're talking about smaller subgroups, so it could be much bigger. So even though the weighted N for Erie County was a Biden +2. Normally, what we would do to project voting shares is look at the entire county, what it looks like demographically, and then look at the larger subsamples. Okay, so we have whites with no college degree. This is how they're breaking down in that region generally. This is their vote preference in that region generally. And then so if that was the case, we would see, Trump's up in Erie County by like 10 points. And that's generally what we found in the Epoch Times poll. In Luzerne, he's just thumping him. Trump is thumping Joe Biden in Luzerne. Lackawanna is the one where, it's Biden town and everyone expected Biden to do better. That's what's going to make him a stronger candidate. If you put together Luzerne, Lackawanna, and Monroe, Trump is up. All right. Anyway, so let's look. Barnes taking a little bit. I was trying to give him some time to get in here, but that kind of dovetails into what I'm saying. And we can circle back when he gets here. But we're almost up on that half hour right now. So let's take a look at that real quick. And this is by popular demand. People wanted to know, right? I think I just clicked it again. I did. Okay. Voting preference for whites by education in Pennsylvania. All right. Again, guys, remember, sampling errors here. All right. So it is entirely true that Joe Biden could be a little bit higher among that high school GED or less. That is what you would normally view to be the white working class. Okay. And the truth is, some of them, Trump did not do well with some college in many of these states in 2016, but it's possible now that people were working toward getting that associate. Okay. And that's why he's now doing better. And in fact, he is carrying them. And we have seen that. We saw this in Florida too. All right. He did win them in Florida, but he's winning them by a larger margin this time. And what we suspect that is some of his white working class base got associate's degrees or have some college. It's been 4 years, guys. It's been 4 years. All right. So I suspect that may be part, or at least part, of why he is now carrying some college. His worst group is minorities, particularly black voters who have graduate degrees. And there aren't many of them, but the margin is overwhelming. What we found is that when you look specific at whites, he's not doing that bad among people with a bachelor, right? An undergrad. Only about 5 points. And then with the graduate, he's getting killed, of course, right? But looking at the high school GED or less, then this is and people are asking me why Trump is ahead 47-45 when the poll itself is the reverse for Joe Biden. The answer to that, folks, is that this is white voters only. Okay.
And if you, we will look at other races in a second, but this is white voters only. So if only whites came to the polls in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump would win by about 2 points. All right. So that's what we found right now. But actually, that's not true. So we have, here's why. The working class, white working class, no college, Trump leads 54-39. So again, did not find the New York Times narrative that generally now everybody is following. We just did not find it. Trump still has a very sizable lead among workers who are white with no college degree. In fact, there's about 6%, and it's hard to see, there's about 6% undecided in this group. When leaned, 5 out of 6 picked Trump. So with the margin of error, people say, well, he's got to hit 60. Considering the sampling error with the group, it is, and then 5 out of 6 leaners going to Trump, it is entirely likely that Trump is in fact at 62% of the white working class vote. And Barnes, he thinks it's actually going to be higher when he comes. We'll talk about it. But this is where we're at right now. And in truth, it could be when we lean those voters, technically Biden looks to be at about 40. But if you take in the sampling error again, it could be much closer to the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, which shows him at about 32%. It's possible because the subgroups have larger sampling errors. It's also possible the other way, of course. It's just that what we are finding, polling everywhere in this state like we did here. Let's look at the participation distribution. As you can clearly see, solid in Erie County. Barnes is with us. So I'm going to go back and grab him now. But as you can see, my point being is, folks, we didn't rely on what is look, it's an insufficient sample size and insufficient subsamples to be able to get a definitive answer. So when he is polling using one mode that only reaches one group of people, it doesn't at all shock me to find that he thinks some of these counties are flipping. All right. Macomb County, we had Trump up in Macomb County when we polled Michigan. I doubt there's been a 20-point reversal in the other direction by now. Why do I doubt that? Because we just polled Pennsylvania. You would see it in Pennsylvania. You would. And let me bring in Robert. Right, Robert? You could hear me? Could you hear me before when I was what I was just saying?
Yeah, I got part of it. I had momentarily had to. The New York Times was busy libeling a client of mine, so I got momentarily
again.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, Lord, it's like I woke up to that. I was like, what the heck? So I got momentarily distracted. But it looks like I'm going to get to sue them. So. I have more. I've been looking for a good excuse at the time. So
this is hard. This is really the world we live in now, Robert. I mean, is this really the world we live in now? And we have look at what they're doing with the Post. They're attacking the hell out of the Post. The Post has physical evidence, man. They have physical evidence. These are people who ran with a conspiracy theory based on anonymous and unnamed sources for 3 years, then gave each other awards for it, and they smear the rest of us. I mean, the nerve of these people, Robert.
No doubt. I mean, everybody knew that story was true. So, I mean, it was like,
right.
That's the other thing. I mean, Hunter Biden is not getting paid.
There's more coming.
Cash. Of course. And not only that, Hunter Biden is just not getting paid the amount of money he was getting paid by the people who were paying him, unless it was related to his dad being vice president. So,
exactly right.
So
it's unbelievable, really.
It's just a common sense story. It's one of those stories that was always going to be true. And so whenever evidence came out about it, it's not so much confirmation bias as just we all know it was always true. And the media, that's why they have to hide it and lie about it.
Well, let's take, I showed them this already, but I really want to get your comments on it. Okay. I'm going to pop it up. And then, like I said, and what I was talking with the audience about before is that and by they, we're talking about the New York Times again here. They are trying to tell people, and this is why, like we talked about on What Are the Odds, this is why I was very excited to get in Pennsylvania again, because was the white working class turning on Donald Trump? Okay. And in fact, I think that it's very likely that we're underestimating his share. And I'll tell you about the leaners too before I hand it off to you. But I think it's very possible because Lackawanna is not in the liberal, is not in the 30s liberal wise ideologically. So that tells us who we may have reached more of and who we may have not. Bucks County is not 37 or 35% liberal. Okay. Right. The state itself is 25, 26 tops percent liberal. And that is coming where? From Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia and Allegheny, and then some of these other counties. In our polling, Donald Trump had a slight lead in Chester. All right. A slight lead, although he was slightly down in Bucks. It's 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if that is reversed, or at least even if Biden gets both of them, I wouldn't be surprised by a little. All right. But it doesn't necessarily mean, that the state is not moving in other directions. Here is the chart. And then as soon as I give you the leaners, you tell me what you think. All right. What we wanted to confirm or deny, right, whether or not they were right. And white working class voters were going to Donald Trump. In fact, we found maybe, and again, remember subsampling errors, right? Remember that? We found Donald Trump, in fact, among white people, not doing that bad with people who have bachelor degrees, not that bad as I thought. And then people who have some college is actually about even. Trump is doing a little bit, he's winning them by a couple of points. And then no college, right? And here we have it. 54 to 39 is white, working class, no college. He's now winning the some college category, which he lost in many states in 2016. Graduate is only a 5-point lead for Biden, which very well could not be. And then 55 to 41 among graduates. And the 6%, and this is important because when those 6% no college whites lean, 5 out of 6 are allocated to Trump. 1 is allocated to Biden. And with sampling errors, that can certainly put him in the low 60s, Robert. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think I would probably intensify in terms of what I think is going to happen. I would intensify the edges. So I think that the high school vote's going to end up being more. It's going to, and I think that will be at least plus 20, but probably closer to plus 25 in Pennsylvania. Though region will play a factor there. And then on the post college side, I think Biden will do better. So I think like right now we have basically, plus 15 for Trump amongst high school, plus 15 or plus 14 for Biden amongst post college.
Right.
My guess is that number goes
plus
up
20. Yep.
In the same direction, in the different directions. In those Biden will do better, I think, amongst post college and will do worse amongst high school. And those any undecideds in that group are going to go the opposite direction. But for people out there, I think it's either 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. The number of high school graduates there are to post-college graduates in Pennsylvania's vote.
That's right. That's right.
So that's what really matters. And I think one of the things, there's 2 things on here that's being that the rest of the polls are missing is they're not making this separation, at least not publicly. In other words, they're not communicating that if you can see on here, there's going to be a difference. If your no college category is all some college and not any high school grads.
Yes, that's right.
And the same is true if your college grads are all post-college grads and not college grads. And I have a strong hunch that this was actually the educational weighting failure of 2016 was not so much college versus non-college. It was that they always had too many post-college people in their polls and too few high school educated people in their polls. So they were, and the effect was like if New York Times was doing this, they would probably end up saying Trump up by 3 because almost all of their non-college were some college, not high school graduates. And they would have said college plus. Well, they did actually say Biden
They did. Yeah.
by 30. And that's because they were getting so many post-college grads in their polls, my guess, and particularly by region. So my view is that this is I think the ends will be more polarized, though it's always hard to tell because exit polling is unreliable, and you can kind of impute information from a census, I mean, from precinct results and county results, but it's never perfect. It's not like you have one precinct where it's only post-college grads and another precinct where it's only high school grads. It's easier to impute the high school numbers than it is the post-college numbers from data. You can do it a little bit by looking at counties and precincts. You'll get some precincts that have 40 to 50% post-college grads. My core takeaway on that is that's part of the problem of how they're weighting, and also it's just who they're getting. They're just not getting high. It was a great interview on I think it's Cato Gottfried's show.
I was just talking about, I was thanking Patrick for his kind words,
and that all of his insights were, I thought it was like a mini me of me. So the thing, I was like, yeah, that's other than you and sometimes Trafalgar, he said, no, I've never heard a pollster basically talk about all the kind of stuff I talk about. And he talked about almost all of it. I mean, the difficulty of getting rural blue collar men, where things are trending
very hard,
groups, so on and so forth. And so for folks out there, the only 3 pollsters that got 2016 correct, particularly in swing states, are again saying it's extremely close and the underlying numbers support Trump. And that's Patrick Basham at the Democracy Institute, and whose polls are only published in the Sunday Express in the UK. There's an exclusive agreement there. And then Trafalgar. And so it's fascinating. I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, I think I'm on some show tomorrow about polling. And I was like, I said, even if you put a lot of confidence in polls, and I put that lower on the totem pole of where to rank in data information, the people who got 2016 right are saying the exact same thing about 2020 that they said in 2016.
Yeah. And in fact, Robert, I mean, Trump did not come within 3 points of Hillary Clinton in our polling in Pennsylvania until October 24th. So there are less undecideds this time. That's certainly true. And the Green Party was kicked off the ballot. But the fact of the matter is, Trump is a closer. He doesn't, and I do believe, though, that if coronavirus never happened, or if at least if it wasn't handled the way it was handled, then this would be a runaway. Runaway incumbent election, right? And this is the thing I have to, I'm not trying to be a schmug person here, because I'm not. But the fact of the matter is, what you just said is right. So we're not the ones who really should be having to defend ourselves, right? So we're not the ones who blew the last 2 election cycles, Robert. They are, So if that's it. There's nothing they can say that can that fact, right? There's nothing they can say. What I just put up on the screen here, folks, now is actually black voter preference by education. I switched the chart a little bit. And you can see here, why does Trump get 15 to 20? Now in this poll, it's 15. It was 20 in our Pennsylvania poll a few weeks ago for the Epoch Times. Why does Trump get 20% almost in the Rust Belt? He's at 15% in the Pennsylvania in this poll of black voters. It's right here. Working black votes, non-college black voters, 24% Donald Trump, 60% for Joe Biden. And Joe Biden would not be running ads, Robert, in rural Pennsylvania, black radio, targeting black voters in rural and suburban Pennsylvania, if he didn't know he was at 60% among non-college, if he didn't know that he was at 80% statewide, right? So if he thought he had 90% locked up, would he be doing that?
Right. No, there's also clearly an enthusiasm problem. Major.
That's right. Who's going to vote is your job. NBC's not going to move away from registered voters. There's only 2 explanations for that, right? You're either a coward who is afraid to put your projection integrity on the line, or you're intentionally doing it to make it look more favorable to Joe Biden because you're ideologically corrupt and you gave in to the news organization who hired you, right? Or both. So sorry, there's only 3 explanations.
Well, I think Patrick Basham, he does a great that whole interview. It's like 2.5 hours long, or almost 3 hours long.
I want to finish watching it. I watched the clip, what you sent me. You sent it to me. So
it's fantastic. He goes into all this extraordinary detail about individual states. Well, for example, only pollster other than you to bring up the anti-war vote in New Hampshire, right? I mean, like he's talking about, well,
Right. He did, didn't he? Yeah.
yeah. And he mentioned that's why his poll picked up on, he thought New Hampshire leaned Trump by what the data they were seeing, that it was one place where that information helped him. But he was detecting the same thing in terms of, he was predicting low enthusiasm, low turnout amongst young voters. They're going to be replaced by middle-aged blue-collar men, and which is my own hypothesis, but that's what his data has been supporting.
Let's while you're talking, I'm just gonna go ahead and mosey over to the crosstabs and look at likelihood and and enthusiasm by age while you're talking. Don't mind me.
Yeah, correct. And so all of his data is showing the same thing that your data is showing, and it is the same thing that all the behavioral trends are showing. And he also highlighted that one of the things he actually follows, which is the only poster I've seen ever say this. It's something that I have tracked since the data has become available, and that is donations by the number of donors you're getting in certain states, in certain places, because Trump started to go off the charts with that in 2016, where though he was losing the money battle, he was winning the donor battle. In other words, he was getting more donors in places like Michigan than Hillary was. Well, in this cycle, he is swamping in terms of number of donors, not money, but the number of donors. He is swamping Biden throughout the Midwest. And I mean, Andy's actually much more competitive in a wide range of even some Democratic states than he ever was in 2016. So while money wise, Biden's got
Nevada. Nevada's one of them. Yep.
Oh, Nevada's got Trump's got a gigantic lead. And it was amongst donors. Places like Nevada, the numbers are 4 to 5 times as many Trump donors as there are Biden donors. Now, Biden's donors give more, but he's actually still losing the Nevada money battle. He got more out of Delaware. He got more, no surprise there. He got more out of in Pennsylvania,
New York,
connected to Delaware. In terms of money, he's been raising money out of Pennsylvania for a long time. Hillary had New York ties, so that ended up being about even. But he's raising less money out of California actually than Hillary did. But Trump is way off the charts, particularly if you can look at on Open Secrets. You can look at it by zip code. You can look at it by region within a state. And I compared 2016 to 2020. It's fascinating where Trump is doing better. But yeah, so I recommend everybody that interview with Patrick Basham. It's very long, but he's clearly on top, because I didn't know what to make of him. I mean, I tracked him in 2016 because I saw the poll pop up, and I knew about their Brexit analysis, which was good. And so I thought, okay, and they along with Trafalgar and you were the only people outside of some scattered individual pollsters who were just polling a particular state that were predicting Trump was going to win the Midwest. And people took a lot of shots at Basham because his national number ended up being different. He thought Trump would do better nationally. That's because, again, nobody was predicting California having 1 million new voters for Hillary Clinton.
That's what happened to us too. Frankly, that's what happened to us.
And that's why I'm telling everybody, I don't really care about the national number. I only care about what's happening in these states, because it would not surprise me with in California, Illinois, and New York, where you're going to have massive mail-in balloting, where you have no enforcement of any kind by the Democrats in control of those states and the counties, that there'll be all kinds of ballots be cast in those places. But who cares? It has no impact on the presidential race. There are no competitive statewide races there. There's some House races competitive there that it might matter, but that's it. Otherwise, I don't see it being a major player. So I'm just focused exclusively on states. And in looking at that, do we have that? Maybe you've already showed it to him. Do we have that the map of what they did for that Nate Cohn poll?
We do, and I was waiting for you to show it. And just before we peel out of here, for those who couldn't see or weren't looking, because I am going to strip this into audio. There's been on your end, on our end, there's just been too many requests for like an iTunes podcast, right? So we're gonna do that for you guys. We'll strip the video and just give audio as well. So for people who can't see, all right. 18 to 29, certain to vote or already voted. All right. Likely to vote, meaning the odds are greater than 50-50. Unlikely to vote, meaning the odds are less than 50-50. Okay. 18 to 29, certain to vote or already voted, 67.4%. That compares to 81 who are 30 to 44, 91 who are 45 to 61, and 94, I'm rounding, who are 65 plus seniors. Likely to vote, meaning greater than 50-50, 18 to 29, only 21%, so not making up a lot of ground there. In 30 to 44, another 15%. And we're in the 90s and the rest, so only 8% for 45 to 64. There's just not that many left, Robert, and then seniors, 6%. But look at unlikely. Remember that I screened out people who were certain not to vote. Most of, they're gone because, of course, you're not voting. 18 to 29. 11.3%. The rest of them, 11.3%, unlikely to vote, meaning the odds are less than 50-50. Everybody else is in the low single digits. Seniors, only 0.2%. 45 to 64, only 1.3%, and 30 to 44, 3.8%. And the reason why Trump is doing better with that category this time is because they're in the economy. And those voters who are more enthusiastic and are certain to vote for Donald Trump are making up a bigger share than they have in the past, and they tend to be more men. All right. And then real quick before we bug out of here, and I'm going to show the map, Robert brings up. Let's show them. Look at the difference in enthusiasm.
Yep.
You have seniors, 66%, extremely enthusiastic, 45 to 64, 58%, 30 to 44, 50. And again, I'm rounding up. And then 18 to 29 is only 45%. I mean, that people are like, oh, well, of course it's a 2-point race. You only got 18 to 29-year-olds at 14%. They were 12% in 2018, Robert. They were supposedly 16% in 2016. What I'm telling you is it will be down from 2016. That is what all the evidence suggests.
Exactly. And for folks out there, the very certain to vote and extremely enthusiastic, generally the age gap will correspond, has been highly predictive of the turnout gap. And so, and this corroborates Gallup's question that they've been asking for a while called, are you paying very close attention?
That's right.
And I looked at the internal crosstabs, and there's the same kind of, their gap's even higher, 33-point gap between seniors and young voters. And I've used that as a predictive tool for turnout and looked at the census data that will come out about a year after the election. In the past, that has accurately predicted the gap of turnout. So to give you a shorter answer, you can look at that extremely enthusiastic crosstab of the Pennsylvania poll that Richard has done and pretty well predict and forecast that group will be the most likely actual turnout. That will be the turnout numbers typically, very close to it. It's stunning how close it gets.
It is. It is.
So you'll probably see about 70% of seniors vote, which is they almost always voted about 70%. Right. Incredible. Then you'll probably see about 60 amongst middle-aged voters, 55 or so amongst the older cohort of millennials. And then you're probably going to see something below 50% in terms of eligible voting age population for millennials and Zoomers. That's by the way, that going back before 2004, that was the norm. Young voters tended not to turn out to vote. To 2004, they got involved, stayed involved for 2008, dropped off in 2012, stayed flat in 2016. It looks like there's going to be another drop off.
Yep.
And this is none of this. It's what Richard's finding in all of his polls and surveys. It's what Basham is finding in all of his polls and surveys. It's what Gallup found in its polls and surveys. But independent of that, it's the other data points that I look at. Presidential
what are the registration numbers, Robert?
Voter registration, presidential primary participation. I mean, remember, folks, you may not. Way back, there was a lot of discussion about how Bernie's 2016 vote did not vote in the Democratic primaries in 2020,
and yet they're going to come out for Biden now,
and even though they're not even registering. Which allows us to translate. Also, knowing that's TV ratings. The whole drop off in Democratic debate watching was amongst 18 to 34-year-olds.
Yep.
They lost a third of their TV audience, which means they lost about half. And those people who tuned in to watch Hillary in the millennial Zoomer group did not tune in to watch Joe Biden.
Yep.
And there's a long history of these voters not tuning in. In fact, Basham noted that it was showing up in his response rate in polls. That Zoomers would just tune, who he said never have a problem telling you their opinion about something.
That's for sure.
Becoming more, they just didn't care to answer the poll, whereas normally they do. And he's like, that his interpretation of that, and I think it's a reasonable one, he says they're so uninterested in this election that while they'll answer almost any poll, they won't answer a political poll or will stay engaged with it. Over the summer, that started to happen as it became clear Biden was the nominee. He said it would have been totally different, and I agree with him. He said it would have been totally different if Bernie was on the ballot. He goes,
yeah, me too.
Totally
I agree with that.
So, and that goes to the early voting data, which unbelievably, even people on the right are completely misreading. I mean, just badly misreading. So there's two things with early voting data. As Richard,
they do every year, Robert. Every year they do this. Every damn year.
As Richard has said many times, as Sean Trendy has said many times, it is very hard to interpret early voting partisan data because you don't know if one party or the other has a disproportionately organized effort to just get it. All they're changing is when someone votes, not whether they vote. And so that's why I generally just don't care about the data as a whole. I look at whether or not there's a surge in turnout amongst any group that's disproportionate. Though this year, I expected there would be because of the partisan shift in voting intention, which somehow people like Ryan, I forget his last name, Godursky, other people, some of the people in the Hill, other places have managed not to read. Apparently, they've just been skipping the polls. For everybody out there, what Richard and I have been talking about, as Gallup noted, in the historically, Republicans and Democrats voted early nationwide. It would sometimes vary by state at about basically the same rate. Now, sometimes one would vote by mail or absentee, and the other one would vote in person, and vice versa. But basically, the early vote share of the electorate did not have a partisan profile, at least according to self-reported voting intention, since we've had early voting over the last 20 years or so. This year is different. Gallup is reporting record-setting levels of Democratic early voting intention and record-setting election day voting intention for Republicans.
Yeah.
So I'll put on my Biden campaign hat. What am I looking at?
Pennsylvania. Here's Pennsylvania, by the way.
Example. Now, and keep this up. So let's say I'm the Biden Pennsylvania campaign organizer, right? I know that about half the vote is going to come in on election day, and I know I'm going to get beat somewhere by 2-1 or worse. That I'm going to. So how many votes? They call it banking. How many votes do I need to bank before election day to survive the Republican Trump onslaught that's coming on election day? Where I'm going to, on election day, when half the people are voting, I'm going to be down by 30 to 40 points amongst that group. What that means is I'll have a deficit between 15 and 20 points net that I have to make up. Well, that means of the half of the vote that votes early, I got to win by the same margins. I got to bank a 30 to 40 point advantage in order to offset the huge Trump edge on election day. So if I'm sitting here reading the early vote data, my first concern is, are we banking enough votes to offset the huge Trump vote that I know is coming on election?
It's coming. It's coming. You want to see it? You want to see how much of a lead Trump has on election? Well, I'll just give it to you while you're talking. I'll look it up. I'll give it to you. Go ahead.
Exactly. For folks out there, maybe listening ultimately on audio, what's happening is the election day vote by all of the polls, including Richard's poll, and just using Pennsylvania as an example, has Trump winning by anywhere from 30 to 40 points on election day, and that over half of the voters are going to vote on election day.
Yep.
So to translate that out, the way
we have a 40-point lead on election day, Robert,
and others have the same. So you multiply that times 50, and you basically
it's the bigger group. It's the bigger group.
It's the bigger group, and in some polls it's as high as 60%. So what you're looking at is, and to give people the math, the bigger the share of the vote on election day. So let's say you have 60% of the people vote on election day, and you win that margin by 40. I just multiply that. That's a 24-point overall lead. That means if I am only 40% vote before election day, In order for me to get to that same 24 to offset it, I need to win by an even bigger margin than Trump is winning on election day. So that's why if I'm a Democratic vote bank guy and I'm looking at the early vote data, I'm thinking what we need to do is win by 40 to 50 points in the early vote. So I want to see us, and the best way to do that is to get a surge of new voters, to get minority, low turnout voters to vote early. So I don't have to worry about whether they
get them out of the way. Yep.
So I mean, in the old days, you would literally pick them up and carry them to the polls. This year,
right?
they designed it this year basically to be mail-in balloting. So I'm delivering the ballot. I'm making sure that they're sending back the ballot. In states that I'm allowed to do it, I'm harvesting the ballot. In states that I'm not allowed to do it, I do it, but try not to get caught. So that's the animal. So here's the second way to look at early voting. Let me tell you, like the New York Times poll in Michigan and Wisconsin, and actually in almost everywhere, Florida, you name it, that was recently taken, where they included within the poll people who reported they had already voted. If you factored amongst voters who in their own poll who reported they had not yet voted, Trump was dead even in Michigan. Trump was dead even in Wisconsin. The entire New York Times lead
comes from that early vote.
That they had already voted. Well, here's the problem. So when I look at it from a poll perspective, in fact, Nate Silver accidentally admitted this. He thought he was bragging. He didn't realize he was exposing.
It's a habit of doing that.
He loved the Nate Cohn Siena poll. Look at how wonderful this is. And we'll break down just how atrocious that poll is. But with red flags everywhere.
Yeah.
But the biggest red flag right out of the gate is, okay, wow. If I'm a Democrat, I need to cross-check and make sure that the votes that have already been banked are what the New York Times says they are, because they said the lead was between 40 and 60 points amongst Democrats, amongst people who had already voted in Michigan and Wisconsin, and comparable leads in Minnesota and Pennsylvania. They had a much bigger lead than you had in Pennsylvania amongst early voters. So, and they had a much greater share of the vote had voted early than actually has.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's a commonplace thing. So it's because the people
that
who
happens to us too. That happens to us too. It's just a high interest poll takers,
Exactly. The people, for folks out there, the kind of folks who vote early are much more likely to answer a poll than people who don't vote early.
For sure.
The most politically committed. So that vote share I wasn't as concerned about. Only as to the extent it reflected, wow, their whole lead comes from that voter group. That's I was fascinated when I saw that because that's news. I mean, like in the past, they have misread the tea leaves on the early vote, but not that badly.
And the point is, even Slimer said that you want to know whether a poll is accurate or not by the time we get to this point. Right. When we're in this, we have this vantage point now. You look and you can see, all right, what did the early ballot returns look like? And then compare them to what the poll found. Right. Well, exactly. If you look at Michigan, for instance, Robert, It's not overwhelming. It's not at all. They're dead even.
Exactly. There's supposed to be a 40 to 50 point lead. And not only that, in Wisconsin, he predicted, and we'll get to, we can probably put up his map.
Yeah, you want it now? Here's and this was done by somebody.
Yeah, what somebody did is they took the map.
Real American, hat tip.
Yep. Yeah, I think that was it. And and I think Red Eagle Politics did a good little video on it too, just comparing it. So this map is, he just took all the little dots of all the people they said they talked to, and figured out, okay, what does the county map look like for each of the Rust Belt states, according to Nate Cohn's polls done by Siena at the New York Times. And look at how absurd some of these map this map
Central
is.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, look at Appalachia. Look at he has, and not only that, notice his crossover. The same Appalachian part of Ohio. And by the way, to give people an idea, basically he has over 30 counties swinging by over 50 points.
Can I show them Obama's win in Pennsylvania, please?
Oh, sure. I mean, exactly. Obama didn't win these counties. He's predicting all of those counties in the southeast corner that even Obama lost. are going to swing. And give you an idea, Greene
And
County,
in central Pennsylvania, look at it.
yeah. So he's got central Pennsylvania. He's got fracking country up in northeast Pennsylvania flipping to Biden. He has Appalachian, southeast Ohio flipping to Biden.
That was the biggest era. That region of Ohio, folks, I got to jump in real quick and just tell everybody, one of the states we grossly underestimated Donald Trump in 2016 was Ohio. The biggest lead we ever had for him was +5, and then we went down to +3. Where did we make a mistake? In the southeastern region that he has got blue right now, we didn't believe two things. One, that the crossover vote was that big. We thought they were like, we just reached too many rural Democrats or something, but that is that area. And we didn't believe them. And we also didn't believe them when they told us that not only were they going to vote different this time, but they were going to vote at higher rates. And so they would have made a larger share of the vote. And we weighted them down. And if we went back and looked, and if we didn't do that, Robert, and then also if we didn't have Cuyahoga as large of a share, then just southeastern Ohio alone would have made it Trump +5. And then Cuyahoga would have made it Trump +7, which would have been a little bit more respectable, right? So now we're 2 points away from where it ended up, right? I mean, so, and by the way, we are going to poll Ohio again, even if I got to front it myself, because that was so Republican friendly. Even in the Epoch Times poll we did, Robert, look at his Ohio map. In the Epoch Times poll, there was in ours, there was a blue dot in the Northeast and there was a blue dot in the Southwest. And then Toledo was even like light blue, so not that Trump's going to do that much better. It's just that area wasn't, look, he's got, all the counties surrounding Toledo are, all filled. I mean, really, come on. And then look at Iowa, which I want to explain to people, even in 2008 and 2012, when Obama won first, Iowa by 12 points, and then by 6 points. He declined significantly. He won in 2004. Bush barely won it by 10,000 votes over John Kerry. It was 49.9 to 49.2. In 2008, then Senator Obama clobbered the worst Republican candidate in modern history, 54 to 44. So sorry, 10 points, not 12. In 2012, though, he won it over Romney by only 6. So a 4-point drop, 52 to 46. But then Trump comes in and he demolishes Clinton, 51.2 to 41.7, a huge swing. That happened with the exception of Lynn, Johnson, and Scott. Trump flipped nearly all of the eastern counties in the state. Scott County, which went for Obama by roughly 14 points and Hillary by only 1.5, 18 eastern counties flipped from backing Obama in 12 to backing Trump. In the southern part of the state, Union and Clark, which backed Obama by 4-1, backed Trump over Clinton by a 2-1 margin. And we're supposed to believe that not only all of those are going to flip back, Robert, but that's not even the swing part of the state, Robert. I don't know where he's filling that in.
Well, that's the next fascinating aspect. So the first aspect right out of the gate,
and let's pull it up again. Let's
three areas of the Midwest completely wrong. In other words, he's predicting 30 to 40 to 50 point swings in Appalachia, in Pennsylvania, Southwest Pennsylvania, and Southeast Ohio. He's predicting the same kind of 20 to 30 to 40 point swings in places like Monroe County, Michigan, which is Southeast working class Michigan, and he's got the same overlapping map in Northwest Ohio. Then he's predicting rural northern Michigan is going to vote more Biden than it votes Trump. Then you go to his Wisconsin map, and he's got almost all of the counties by the water, including he has all of the WOW counties swinging 20 to 30 points to 50 points in favor of Biden. And he has western and northern Norwegian parts of Wisconsin all swinging by 10, 20, 30, 40 points. He's got the problems you identified in Iowa, plus he's missing the Dubuque, eastern Iowa, some of those areas. He has and then he has the Norwegian parts of Minnesota, northern and western Minnesota. Now, here's a little clue that Biden's in trouble and why he spent all the money in Minnesota. Notice that even Cohn's polls acknowledge that Duluth and St. Louis County is going Trump.
Cook is the only thing he's holding yet. Listen, folks.
Except the the rural counties that Trump won by 20 in the same iron range are magically flipping to Biden. This is why polling people who looked at this were like, and great credit to whoever did the map.
At Real American, whoever that is, you know.
Exactly. And some of the, that's why I was fascinated that some of these same guys were really worried about early voting. I'm like, you don't need to worry about that. But
what you just said with Monroe, by the way, I just want to point out that Monroe right now, driving the turnout in what we know about Michigan thus far, Monroe is over R37 right now.
Exactly.
Just so everybody understands what the hell his poll is saying, that Biden is clobbering him so much in the early vote that it's going to flip counties like Monroe. The early vote is R plus 37 in Monroe.
Look at the wow counties. So he said because of the early vote that those counties were going to flip 20, 30 to 40 points in favor of Biden. Well, folks, in some of those wow counties, the Republican edge is as big as 70 points in the early voting. So his polling was clearly way wrong. There is zero doubt based on his own polling, and he had enough of a sample size, 15% to 20% of his poll sample were early votes in these states. You aggregate that, he has almost 500, 600 reported early voters in these states that he recently polled. And he said that Democrats were winning them by 40 to 50 points. And in one, we know that's not happening statewide, but he was off by only about 40 or 50 points. And then in key counties, he was off by 80 points, 85. I mean, just absurd numbers. So we already know his poll is complete crap. But the other component of this
artifacts of polling, Robert. It's the artifact of the mode he's doing. And he's got to know this already. He just did this in Florida and North Carolina. He just blew this. He knows you got to be able to do an autopsy after an election cycle and say, what did I do wrong? This is what you did wrong, Nate. All right. I mean, look, he won, and going back to Minnesota real quick, he won the North 56-37 by 20 points, but he couldn't carry Duluth really tipped him over. He couldn't carry St. Louis. The only one that his poll shows in those 4 iron range northeastern counties, those are the ones that went for Hillary and kept her in the lead in Minnesota, that in her Twin Cities margin. Yet, I mean, really, Robert, he's going to hold Cook. That's it. But he's going to win the rest of the northern state, the rest of the iron range. Are you kidding me?
Exactly. It was clear to me. It also confirmed my theory. When I saw how many Norwegian areas he had suddenly flipping by 20 to 30, 40 points, I was like, okay, how, like what you said, how did he get there? Well, to his credit, he disclosed where voters had flipped. And he had no voters flipping in any of these areas. In fact, net in the Norwegian areas, he had Republican trend. He had more Hillary to Trump than Trump to Biden voters in those areas. So what that tells you is he doesn't have new voters coming out of these areas. He doesn't have flip voters coming out of these areas. So how did he get these numbers? He just way overpolled Democrats in all these areas. Yeah. And the reason why he doesn't know the significance is he doesn't know what this map is supposed to really look like. He doesn't do county analysis. He doesn't do ancestry analysis. He doesn't do regional analysis. It comes down to this, folks. None of these polls have representative sampling. They're no longer getting a sample of a person that represents a group of voters within those states.
We know this from Greene County, Pennsylvania. That's why I targeted that specifically.
Appalachian Southwest corner that he has going for Biden by 30, that voted for Trump by 40, that where voter registration has moved by double digit. So he has a 70-point movement. And it's not, if it'd be one thing if it was like just an anomaly of Greene, but he has all of coal country in both Southwest Pennsylvania, Northeast Pennsylvania, and Southeast Ohio. He has all of those areas flipping 30, 40 to 50 points, even though he has no people within those counties that say they're changing their vote.
And Robert, you can't do that. That's why I uploaded this chart coming up, which I showed before, but this is why I uploaded it to make the juxtaposition. You can't do it with numbers like this. No, among the working class, college whites. You can't do it with 39%.
He admitted his own internals have Trump winning working class whites by 25 points.
It's more than mine. So it's more than mine.
So he managed to poll. So it's like, he managed to, like, it turned out, I thought I was kind of being sarcastic when I said, when Nate Cohn polls some rural working class county, he manages to find like the one librarian who hates Trump.
I know. I told people that after our conversation. I told people that on Inside the Numbers.
That's the only explanation. And for folks,
Yeah, it is.
it's not just Cohn could have. I don't think Cohn set out to deliberately do this. His problem is he doesn't know and he has no incentive, which is what Basham got into.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. Yeah,
he's got no incentive to get it right for Trump. He's got every incentive to get it wrong for Biden.
Yeah.
But all these guys, if it goes the way we think it's going to go, I don't know how many of them are going to be able to recover because they're going out on a limb. They're now backing Quinnipiac, hey, Biden's going to crush Trump in Georgia. Even Nate Silver was like, "Oh, this is going to end up embarrassing." So even
you think, right?
Everybody chill, please don't.
Even Tom Bevan, he pulled a U. Tom Bevan, who is the head of Real Clear Politics, because Josh Krausnauer, I don't care if I'm getting his last name right. I have that little respect for him. All right, I mean he's not even a good poll reader, but he's definitely not a political prognosticator. I bashed him the other day for West Virginia. Dummy, the Metro News in 2016 had Trump at 49% in West Virginia. All right. So to look at a Metro News poll and like, oh, he's losing his base. But Tom Bevan retweeted him and he said, take a $25,000 bet. Not even Quinnipiac will do it because they know damn well he is not ahead of Donald Trump in Georgia by 7 points. Come on, Robert. I could see a 2-point race. I could see a 2-point race. 7 points. Come on.
Absolutely. Appalachia in general is very hard to poll. Look at the group saying is very hard to reach. Rural, white, working class, got man over in the middle age. Well, that's what there's tons of in Appalachia. That's why for folks that don't know the context, in 2016, the same pollster got West Virginia wrong by 24 points.
Yep. Trump plus 18, just like now, by the way, like now, just different margins. And Trump was never above 50. Now he's at 53 or something at least.
Joke. A lot of the
total joke.
We're off by double digits in West Virginia. That's why I got the Republican at a ridiculous underdog odds, and they almost won. So. So that's the nature of it. So the poll, they're no longer getting representative sampling within these polling groups in order to measure. But the one thing we can measure is how accurate were they with early voting.
Yeah.
And with Gallup and everybody else saying that all these voters, that half of the electorate is going to vote early, and that electorate is going to be 3-1, 2-1, 3-1 Democratic. It means if I'm a Democrat, I got to have a 30 to 50 point edge. So like in Florida, because Republicans...
At least 30, at least.
And by the way, for folks that are out there like, why in the world aren't Republicans voting early? One, they've been listening to Trump the last 2 months.
Yeah.
But it's not all bad because like if I had some Republicans reach out to me from Pennsylvania. Anybody the reason why you're seeing this probably more in Pennsylvania.
I got that email too. What you shared with me, I got that email. Tell people about I told him I wouldn't use his name, but Bucks County specifically.
Right. So 2 things. One is that they already had a test run in Pennsylvania of what this would look like in the June primaries. And what happened was Democrats won by more than 2-1, on average 3-1. They won the early vote when it was all finished and done. And then the Republicans poured out on election day, and Republicans ended up outdoing Democrats in comparable legislative districts in Bucks County.
Pretty significantly too. Yeah. Pretty significant.
And then some other people emailed me and explained why. And they said they don't trust the governor, so they ordered the ballots just in case he didn't allow them to vote in person. So that's why you're seeing more mail requests than returns. Secondly, Democrats are allowed to automatically sign up to receive a ballot. If they voted in the primary, they'll automatically get it. There's other ways it's automatically sent. They don't have to request it. So that's why there's a lot of Democratic requests out there. But their view is this. They don't trust the Democratic political machine to not pad the ballots if they vote early and everybody knows how many Republicans voted. So they think, and I think you're seeing some of this in Florida, you're seeing this in some
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me you're not seeing much of it in Michigan and Wisconsin because, particularly in Wisconsin, they think of themselves as such a clean state. They don't think of themselves as a dirty state.
This is Florida, by the way. This is Florida.
Oh, yeah,
it's even worse in Pennsylvania, by the way.
Completely. You look at confidence. Why aren't Republicans mail-in balloting? It's because 80% of them, more than 80%, do not have a great deal of trust in it.
Yep.
More than 60% don't even have a fair amount of trust in it. So they're reporting 60% are saying either not very much trust at all or none at all. Now contrast that to Democrats, where almost 80% have a great deal or fair amount of trust in it.
Yes, exactly.
So the reason why there's this massive shift in voting intention is because they've picked up on Trump's messaging, with Democrats saying, oh, this must be a great method because Trump doesn't like it, and Democrats tell me it's great. And the whole turnout machine, Democrats made a massive gamble that they were going to not go door to door. And I've been really nice. I've helped my Democratic friends. I've told them it's really risky to go door to door. You might spread COVID. So you should probably stay home and not do it. Maybe it could even spread through the phone lines. So you probably shouldn't phone bank either. But they've actually they've actually done that. They've actually not. They're not phone banking. They just started phone banking a week ago. They're not going door to door at all, because I live in a Mexican American neighborhood in working class Las Vegas.
But we've seen Trump's. We've
Trump
been
are out frequently.
Robert,
So-
we're a new address. Robert, they found us. The house just freaking went up in July, and mid-July we closed. They came, they found us. They were like, "You just moved from Florida?" We're like, "Oh my God. Oh my." I mean, that is the way it is with Trump's campaign, folks.
And that was one of the things that Basham noted. Basham noted, he said there really was no, and you know this too, there really was no ground machine for Trump in 2016 beyond what a state party
Republicans abandoned him in Florida. They completely abandoned him.
completely. And
Yep.
they did it, especially after the Access Hollywood tape. Whereas this time they have a tuned up machine. And what Democrats did is the Democrats have always had a great get out the vote machine, except this year they decided to suspend it. They decided to shift to, hey, we're just going to rely on mail-in balloting. And this is magically going to cure it, because apparently whenever anybody who's a marginal voter gets a ballot in the mail, they're going to be like, oh, yes, I must vote. And
Yeah.
what they're discovering is that's not happening. They're not suddenly must voting. And there's only so much ballot harvesting you can do, particularly in places that either it's not legal or places where they're not accustomed to doing it.
I'm going to make a chart right in front of everybody while you're talking. This is Pennsylvania. I showed you guys Florida before. Trust in mail-in voting. It's even worse in Pennsylvania, which you shouldn't be surprised, because we've had absentee ballots in Florida for a very long time. So what you're seeing right now is me creating a chart from the crosstab, which I love. MarketSite, it can do that. All right. Look at a great deal of trust, and Democrats are red because I haven't switched the colors yet. I'll do that. But you can clearly see, Robert, look at who doesn't trust mail-in balloting. Republican, none at all, 37.1%. Not very much, 35.1%. Only a fair amount, 16.8%. A great deal, only 11%. And then compare that, folks, to Democrats. Independents, by the way, are with Republicans on this, which is why you see the vast majority of independents in Pennsylvania now saying, or not the majority, but the biggest block, say, oh yeah, it is, I think, a majority. I'll go back and look. But the voting intention says that Republicans have independents with them on this issue. And so don't be surprised when he closes that independent gap. And in the latter part of our polling, Robert, in fact, he was losing independents by 2 points a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. And then I never got these margins you see in Monmouth and the New York Times. And then he flipped that to a 6-point lead right now in our polling among Pennsylvania independents. We view he's got to win them by like 7 or 8, and I know the exit polls say otherwise, but you don't want to count on crossover, right? So if you can get your crossover to 11 or 12, 11 or better, and then you have independents by 7 or 8, you're gonna eke out the state of Pennsylvania. So that you have to, because their base is bigger. And by the way, the New York Times polls R plus in Pennsylvania. Robert, if we made ours R+1, Trump would be leading by 3 points, 4 points. I mean, it would, forget it.
Well, exactly. And I think if you move to purely self-identification, it's probably, I think it actually will be like R+0.
It may be identification wise. Yeah.
For people to know the difference, I think there are more registered Democrats that probably now self-identify as independent or Republican than in Pennsylvania. Then there are Republicans who self-identify as independent or Democrat. Because what is, you have some people just don't go through the hassle to change their voter registration.
Yeah.
In the South, this is a huge deal. This is, Louisiana has a bunch of Democrats, North Carolina, a bunch of Democrats.
Crap.
Just
Used the wrong one.
But for folks out there, look at the ratio gap between Republicans and Democrats amongst the like you look at something like a great deal and not at all.
Yep.
A great deal is going to be the people who are most likely to actually use that mechanism of balloting. So it gives you a preview of what the margins should be. And what you're seeing is almost 4-1 margin. Democrats have a great deal of confidence versus Republicans in Pennsylvania. And remember, by the way, folks, in Pennsylvania is where there's been actual indictments for the Philadelphia political machine creating fake absentee ballots.
There are actual indictments, yes.
So this is
Even
why
though it never happens.
They do not trust mail-in balloting, especially. And I think and this is what actually people emailed me from Pennsylvania, who are they're like, look, there's no way we want the Democrats to know how many ballots they need to stuff. So we're not going to vote until Election Day, because then they're going to have to stuff the ballots after Election Day.
That's what I tried explaining to some people. Yes, I think on yesterday's show, I said, just so everyone understands what I'm talking about, if they don't know what the Election Day break is, or the voting is, they maybe have an idea of the break because they've been polling, so they're estimating what the break's going to be, but they don't know what the share is going to be, right? So if they don't know, then they can't preemptively do anything. And again, they can call it conspiracies all they want, but in Pennsylvania, we now know from indictments almost without a doubt, Hillary Clinton lost Pennsylvania by a bigger margin because in the indictments, it went through the last 3 cycles, including primaries. All right. This was in operation, and we knew there were going to be more indictments. Robert, you're a lawyer. Every time it says so-and-so, we're going to not name him right now, that means he's a fink. He ratted and he's still talking, and there's going to be more indictments.
And for folks out there, there's 2 truths I always talk about with voting. It is much easier than people believe to commit voting fraud.
Well, of course,
and
yeah.
It is also much easier to get caught than people realize. The real magic is to be able to know how many ballots you need to steal in advance so that you can steal just that amount and try to get no higher.
Yeah.
Because they don't want it to look obvious. So they don't want there might be 120% registration. In other words, 120% of the people in certain Philadelphia precincts manage to be registered. But you can't have 120% turnout, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So there's an art form to stealing. And what it is you want to only steal what you got to steal. And if you have no idea how ballots you need, it's a huge some of these Democratic vote vendors who think, and media types who think they're helping Democrats by spreading the false information about early voting, they're hurting because it's going to hurt their turnout and it's going to send the message that they don't need to steal it all. Well, good luck with that, because right now, so what should be happening in Pennsylvania is you should see 50 to 60 point lead. If I was a Biden advisor, if I was betting on Biden, what I would be wanting is at least a 30-point lead in Florida, probably more like 40 because early voting hasn't started and Republicans are going to turn out more then. And I want a 50 or more lead throughout the entire Midwest. And I'm only even close to that in Pennsylvania and Minnesota, where I really need 60-point leads based on what I'm seeing in the polling data. Because in those, Pennsylvania is much more intense at these voting intentions. I mean, like what you have, and just if let's assume that the people who don't have trust in mail-in voting are going to vote on Election Day, and those who do are going to vote early, what you're seeing is you're projecting a 40 to 50-point win for Republicans on Election Day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
If I'm a Democrat, the only way I feel comfortable at all is if I go into Election Day with at least a 50-point lead amongst those who already voted. And the problem is in Pennsylvania, they're at about 35%, same in Minnesota. And in Michigan and Wisconsin, I'm just screwed. I'm at 0 with a quarter of the vote in. He goes, how in the heck am I going to get a 40-point lead, 50-point lead, as New York Times said there was? How am I going to get that lead if when 25% of the vote is already in?
And you guys just watch me create that chart live. I thought that was something I could do for everybody, you know?
Exactly. This is why voting intention has changed. Trust has changed. Now, to be honest, in Pennsylvania, any state that has a history, Like, so in Illinois, you would find probably a lot of Republicans downstate not trust any kind of voting scheme that allows Cook County to pass.
Right.
Same is true in Pennsylvania. There's, and I was telling some other people, they're like, why aren't they voting early in Pennsylvania? It's like, remember, Trump mentioned Philadelphia by name in the debate.
Yep.
He said, so he was telling everybody they're going to try to steal it. What Trump really wants is he wants them all. Now, he'll say, get out and vote early now. He'll start saying that. But down deep, he wants them all to turn out on election day. He wants the Democrats to have no idea, to be misled into thinking, oh, we got a great lead. We're up 30 points in the early vote. To give people an idea, that would be like having the African-American urban precincts in North Philly come in and you're up by 40 if you're a Democrat. See, if you know what you're doing, you know that's panic sign. That means you're screwed. You're dead. You need to be up by 70. You need to be up by 80 in those precincts. And some of those you need to be up by 90.
We're looking at a 30% differential on election day just by party. It's over 30. I mean, I just put that up now. And then there's the trust and we just created while Robert was talking. I mean, that's Robert. That is the only downside here for Trump campaign, and it's worth noticing. It's worth mentioning is you got to get that vote out. You just made it.
Here's the It's the risk that a person doesn't vote on election day because you didn't get them out early versus the risk that the Democrats are going to pad the ballots when they know they did vote early.
Yeah.
And
that's why you should try, like in a state like Minnesota, for instance, the 250,000 white working men that just didn't show up in 2018, go get them to vote, or if you can, but then.
And they're actually doing that. I guess they're doing it. I don't even know.
They must be in Wisconsin, Robert. They must be.
To give you an idea of that Monroe County that was supposedly flipping as Richard
in
mentioned,
its poll. Yep.
In the early vote, I think it's up by almost 40 points.
37.1.
And man, that's an old working class Union County, folks. Right south of Detroit, represented by what's her name, the widow of that old school guy who was there forever.
We had Dingle. We had Monroe was in the 60s for Trump when we polled for the Epoch Times. 62, 63, something. I mean, it was up there.
Well, if you look at all the blue collar urban counties, industrial counties that you polled, for the most part had at least at some point, whether it was the earlier poll or this poll, at some point along there had Trump doing better than 2016. Yeah,
there were some where he was. Absolutely.
You have Nate Cohn predicting massive shifts in those exact counties.
That's why now we have this new, though, Robert. Pennsylvania's new. So I was, a week ago, I was willing to entertain the fact that maybe something happened where it shifted considerably. And that's why I was dying to get in and poll Pennsylvania. All right, maybe he's right. He's gone to something, or not, or at least he's catching something. No, folks. No. Here is, again, for everyone, maybe because we're getting new viewers every second here. They're obviously, right? This is white voters in Pennsylvania by education. All right. White working class is red. Some college associates, Trump is even carrying them. In undergrads, meaning they have a bachelor degree, right? That is pretty damn close, although I think that it will widen out for Biden a little bit, honestly. Maybe not. Who knows?
Right. Well, and the other thing here is what is useful.
Post-grad will widen out for him.
Yeah, I think so. But the other thing is I like to compare apples to apples. So my recollection from your 2016 polls is this has Trump basically doing a little bit better or the same with working class voters, a little bit weaker with post-college voters, about the same with college voters. Because that's what's interesting is
he's doing better with some college than we had him. Some college. We had that at Clinton. That was Clinton in most of our polling. It was Clinton.
People forget there actually was enthusiasm for Clinton, much more enthusiasm for Clinton than there is for Biden.
Yep.
Hillary did have her base. I mean, the sort of the would-be feminist, the people who hate Trump now, they actually loved Hillary. I mean, people, I think because so many people on the right hated Hillary, they tend to forget she actually had an enthusiastic base. That's why she took Obama to the limit in 2008. I mean, there was a base of support for her, and to give an example, those voter registration trends showed Trump was going to bring back Republican voters who skipped in 2012, but Hillary was keeping most of Obama's vote, aside from vote that was unique to Obama, namely African American voters.
Yeah,
Nobody was going to get that vote back. There's a long history of this. First time first time black guys up against it. Absolutely, there's going to be a bunch of African American voters turn out for him. But if you knew mayoral elections, you knew that the first time they run for African American candidate runs, they get much more support when they run for re-election than they did for their first election. But later on, that just fades out and disappears. It's not like they turn out for any black candidate. It's the first time black president under attack, needs them to rally, they rally. You could call it the OJ jury effect.
Yeah.
And by the way, OJ was innocent for everybody out there. That's another.
In the Epoch Times poll, I just nested while you were talking, Robert. Trump had a 6-point lead with white voters who had some college education. And then with Joe Biden, he's actually fallen since we polled for the Epoch Times. He's actually fallen. Trump gained 6 points and Biden fell about 2 with the working class. So he had, I just don't know what the hell he's talking about, is my point.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's where you look into his data. It turned out there was no data behind it. Like, I was curious, okay, maybe Norwegian voters are swinging according to his poll. Maybe working class rural voters are swinging. That isn't what he found. He just sampled upper middle class. He managed in rural areas to get the only upper middle class people in those areas. So it's incredible what he did. And that's where, if you were a pollster who understood the community, and this is why we say, Kevin Phillips, emerging Republican majority, which I have somewhere right around here. If you have
asked what that book was behind you the other day.
Yeah, the one is the Pennsylvania realignment book, which is also good about Pennsylvania. The Phillips is the Bible. These days, because so much of polling is art, as Basham noted as well, in order to be a good artist, and to give you an idea of what the media is telling you the cheap knockoffs down the street are the art gallery to go to, and ignore that Picasso guy on the end of the street.
Yeah, it's so true.
Weird.
I mean, Robert, I don't know why. I mean, the insecurity level, he nailed that on the money. If they were so secure, they wouldn't be threatened by somebody else's, take on the conversation. They wouldn't. And it's just so vicious. And I have to, he's not used to that. Over there, I got pollster friends I got a pollster friend in Great Britain. And he's like, I don't do this to each other. We just don't do this to each other.
Well, it's Nate Silver acts as a gatekeeper to keep out certain people, to punish the dissidents, to punish the heretics, and reward the saintly. And these people are just really bad at. I mean, Quinnipiac's going off is just on drugs.
Robert, they're not on drugs. They're totally. Look,
Georgia's going to go 7. Florida's going to go whatever. I'm just waiting for one of them. Somebody's going to predict West Virginia's going to swing to Biden.
Somebody coming. It's coming. Yeah. Wait, Missouri or Indiana? That's my pick.
Nate Silver already has it. He has Missouri.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
Right now on his map, he has Missouri as a toss-up. This guy is the gift that keeps on giving.
Wait a minute. How could he? Again, fraud alert. National polls aren't supposed to swing his model. Right. There's been one tight poll in Missouri, or at least the one I know of. I think there was out of nowhere, Remington popped out with a Missouri thing and said it was only 5 points. I got to tell you guys, this happens in some of these states almost all the time. And if he knew anything about the history of, then he would know this happens. No, it doesn't happen, though, that, and I can look right now, there were some polls in 2016 that had Georgia going to Clinton until the end.
The Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Yes, they're the worst.
They had been awful in 2014. They've been awful in other places.
Clinton +7 at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
So we've been here before. Quinnipiac, though, was always pretty bullish on Trump.
A 12.5-point error.
Oh, no, they tied. Actually, the comparable poll in 2016 was tied at 46. Okay, in Quinnipiac, the comparable poll. And the comparable poll in Ohio, it was 2-point difference now. So Quinnipiac just said Biden by 1. They had Trump by 1 at this point. Trump won Ohio folks by, as you know, 9.1 or something like that. So, So
that's what the swings they have in Iowa and Ohio are insane. The swings, Iowa would make more sense than Ohio.
Me too. I agree.
Because, and this goes back to 2014. It's how I came across your site, People's Pundit Daily. People can subscribe to get a lot of this intel and insight on a regular basis. I did in 2016 because I was going to make my biggest bet ever on Trump. And I was looking, and I realized the only thing that was disagreeing with my analysis were polls. And so I started digging and doing I had done a lot of polling analysis when I was a political consultant back in the day, but hadn't got into it recently. And as part of that, I came across your articles from 2014 talking about how all these Southern Senate races are being badly polled.
Yeah.
And so I started tracking. So I was one of the subscribers tracking the daily polls, and only you and Basham and then occasionally Trafalgar were saying the Midwest was going to go Trump.
Yep.
Now I had people up on the ground. I'm from those states. I personally visited those states. So everything I saw was saying Trump, 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 Trump. And yet I'm staring at polls that are saying double digits for Hillary. By the way, here's another fake piece of news out there. Oh, Hillary was never at 50% and Joe Biden is at 50%. So this is a big difference. Go back and look at the polls, folks.
Biden +7 in Arizona today. Monmouth, Ohio Predictive Insights, though, is down to Biden +3. So
and by the way, they had a huge Hillary bent in 2016.
Yeah. And they were pretty bullish on cinema, too. There were a couple cinema +7s. And yeah, which did not happen, folks. She eked it out.
She got it the old-fashioned way. She stole it.
Yeah, she did. But dumpster diving and keeping polling stations open when Republicans weren't voting. Yeah, she did.
There's a lot of ways to get that done. To get those dirty deeds done dirt cheap, as they say.
Yeah, that's right.
That could be the theme song of the Democratic National Committee. Hunter Biden would be the sort of poster boy for it.
Holy crap, Robert! You see that with that? I mean, nothing surprises me at this point, but obviously the email yesterday was not the whole of it. People had been wondering. I did know this was coming. That was what I was talking about, guys. And a lot of people did. So when Maggie Haberman pretends like she's just now reacting on Twitter and trying to put together a way to debunk the New York Post story, she's full of crap. She's known this has been coming for a while. That's the best that she came up with over about 10 days to figure out how to, review this. I mean, unbelievable. The email was just to tie Biden to the lie that he said, which was that he never discussed anything with his son about those dealings. And that was just Ukraine. There is more. And by the way, there's more than even what you see with China today. It will be, I don't know if I'd call it an avalanche, because the media is going to try. Even Fox News, man, has been trying to attack their sister people, over it. I mean, Fox is in the tank for Biden, but there's more. And the email was just to make the connection, that look, he was lying. And there goes Real Clear Politics in my ear, because I wanted to go and check what Arizona was today. But yeah, the bottom line is that even Fox is trying to figure out ways to discredit the story. The email was simply, the point to launch that first was to simply show Joe was lying. And he was. And everybody knew he was. But they just didn't want to tell the public, But I've never seen these twists and turns, man, from that other chode from the Washington Post. He's a complete, he's just a complete, deep state hack. I hate to use that word, but there's nothing else to call it. I mean, these are the same people who pushed collusion for 3 years. Kyle Cheney, right? And, kudos to Molly for saying, look, the election interference is happening in this country. It's by the Russia collusion, disinformation, promoting media and their leftist tech companies. She's right. Totally true. So don't be shocked by some of this. I mean, I get stunned though.
I'm glad Trump's back on the trail.
He's got to be on the trail to have a chance, Robert. He's got to.
I was, especially when he gets to these Midwestern states, he's starting to get right back into core populist messaging.
Yeah.
So he's bringing up war, he's bringing up corruption, he's bringing up trade, and he's hammering them every place he goes. So it's good to put him in those places, because when he's in those places, he knows how to stay on message. So that's why I'm glad that I hope they just keep hammering the Midwest. I would be having him even more in the Midwest. I think he's making stops in Georgia because of the
He's in
Senate.
North Carolina too. I mean, that's for Tillis. It's not because of the Survey USA poll. I don't know if you heard this. We get, everywhere I go, man, I am bed. And some Democrats here on Friday, their general take was that Cal Cunningham had about a 7-point lead, 6-point lead. That's what they really believe. I'm just telling you what they believe. And that this scandal has bumped him. They say their polling now has Cal within it's like a 2-point lead. That's it. And
He's down 4 or 5.
Yeah. That's the way I took it too. But Tillis is no stranger to trailing in the polls. He won without he never led. He never led in a single media university public poll in 14. Robert, never, not a single one.
Polls are way off. They're creating great betting opportunities. North Carolina Senate probably going to be an underdog. It should be a favorite. Georgia
is, yeah.
Republican may be the underdog. Both Republicans may be underdogs. That's nonsense. And by the way, for 2014, going back to the end of that story, Richard went through detail how all these Southern state polling was way off, and not just like off by 3 or 4 points, off by 7 points, 10, 12 points. And by the way, in 2018, in those same kind of states, in Indiana, in Missouri, in Florida, wrong. Quinnipiac's last Florida poll,
even West Virginia,
way off. In Florida, they had both Gillum and Nelson winning by 7. That was Quinnipiac's last Florida poll. By the way, both of them lost. Nate Silver predicted easy wins for Democrats in Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio, Georgia, and Florida.
Yes, that's right.
Won one of those 5, and that was by a narrow gap. Marist predicted in Wisconsin that Evers was going to win by double digits.
That's right, folks. Let's not forget. 20 points for Sherrod Brown. 20 points.
A-plus pollster. Remember that? Marist average error of a media poll in the Midwest, including 2018, has been double digits in any competitive race. Marist also said Stabenow would beat James by 18 points. So won by 6.
And look, remember
Michigan.
And what also caused the miss in Michigan in 2016, the primary in the Democrat, because it's not only Republican races. Understand, folks.
Estimated Bernie Sanders by 30 points.
30 points, Robert. And where did he get that win from? He got it from the same voters that we are telling people right now are almost impossible.
Voters.
Yes. And you cannot reach them the way that Nate is polling. You cannot. You just won't.
And that's what his map showed.
Waste $20 a response.
You wouldn't put out a poll with that map.
Never.
Embarrassing map. Now, it's a great measurement. I mean, all future pollsters should look at, okay, what does our county map look like if our results are accurate? And if you come back with a map that has you saying all of Appalachia is going to flip by 40 points to Biden, and you don't have a single voter in that reporting that they're flipping in your own poll, it should be a sign, oops, we made a mistake.
We did something wrong.
Unrepresentative sample. Because remember, everything about polling is how representative is the sample. Now, I have my general caveat. Polling is about people predicting their future behavior. That's never been a perfect tool for forecasting. Look at all of the other behavioral activities out there to tell you what's likely to occur. But aside from that, in the current environment, everything about polling is, did you get a representative sample? And they are clearly not getting anything resembling that, which is most latest confirmed in the early voting data. The early voting data is running 20 to 50 points behind. The Democrats are running 20 to 50 points behind what Nate Cohn's poll said they would be at. So how off is the rest of the poll then? And if you're Trump, you don't need the rest of the poll to be off, because according to those polls, even Nate Cohn's polls, Trump was going to win by massive margins on election day. So if he's anywhere close, if it's less than 30 points in Minnesota, less than 30 points in Pennsylvania, less than 30 points in Florida, even Nate Cohn's polls admit Trump's going to win all of those states. Yeah. And the same in Michigan, the same in Wisconsin. And
Robert, if I'm wrong in Florida, I would be stunned. I know where every vote is, and we could look at
some of the regions. I mean, look, everyone's talking about the Tampa Bay area, and that's fine. And we actually, because of Hillsborough, not because so much of Pinellas, because of Hillsborough, we did find Biden with a little bit of a lead there when it was relatively even. When you account for those 3 counties, it was relatively even in 2016. But Orlando and the Atlantic coast was roughly even, but it really was about Clinton +1. Now it's Trump +4. Miami-Dade was Hillary Clinton +30, and now it's Trump's up about 5 points roughly in his vote. He's not at 34 anymore. He's going to get anywhere between 38 to 40, and Biden was down considerably. So we're looking at least a 9-point swing in Miami-Dade. A 9-point swing in Miami-Dade is tens of thousands of votes.
But every poll out of Miami-Dade
is finding that.
Except for Nate Cohn's poll. It's like this was another sign that Nate Cohn should have been, he had Cubans going heavily for Biden.
Yeah, so and we did
unrepresentative sample of Cubans because your poll shows them with major leads. Florida International University, which
32 points. We have 32 points.
That was 1,000+ poll of just Cubans in Florida.
Yeah,
and Trump is up by 32.
And let me explain why that happens. Because when we first started polling in Florida too, that happens. The most interested people will pick up the phone first, and they are the least representative. And then you must continue to poll them by different ways, by the way, because a phone is never going to get you a Cuban representation. If you do IVR, we can reach, and that is some way that in the past how we have balanced this out. So they won't talk to you live call or conservative Cubans. But if you call them and give them the option, listen, we're going to redirect you to an anonymous survey that is conducted through interactive voice response. Will you take the survey? Okay. And then you redirect them and they will talk and they will, press the button. They'll give you the answers that way, Robert. If you put them on a phone with a caddy, they'll hang up. And it's just true. It happens. And when you do this, as long as we do, that. But he hasn't, and he doesn't know. You understand what I'm saying?
Exactly. One of the keys that you've identified that we haven't talked about as often about the problems and difficulties and obstacles of contemporary polling is if you're using a live call mode. Yeah. Okay. We can see how that works. But one of the big risks in the modern era of live call mode polling, aside from the fact that 98% of the people who you call will not answer the phone, so that's a problem. Your risk is high. You're going to get a non-representative sample,
and when they do, only 10% of them will talk to you.
Exactly, and then the additional problem is the call center you're using, and the problem is a lot of these live call back in the 80s and 90s. Your live, and particularly when Gallup and other people were doing it, your live call centers would match up with the demographics of who they were calling, because Gallup always understood the importance of this because they used to have door-to-door. The way they got polling results was by hiring door-to-door salesmen who went door-to-door. And so they were people, and they hired the people who knew their community, who knew their group, knew their population. Even they still ran into problems with getting representative sampling if there was a big class divide or culture divide, like between rural and urban, as there was in 1948. But independent of that, and so they would hire call centers that would reflect and represent the people they're calling, but now that's often not happening. They're using call centers. Sometimes they're using even, I know of pollsters are using internet foreign call centers. That's going to be a huge problem. There's going to be people in rural.
Me too.
Absolutely. If you're somebody in West Virginia and somebody's calling you from India asking your opinion, folks, they ain't answering. And that's nothing against people from India. I'm just explaining how people respond to polls, particularly if you're a 55-year-old plumber in a place like Appalachia. You're not telling some person from a foreign country what you're doing in your politics or what your beliefs are. It just ain't happening. So that's an additional problem with the live phone poll. Number one, almost nobody answers it these days. Number two, you don't get representative samples because certain groups don't answer, period, ever. And three, even if you get an answer, if you're not using the right call center, you're not going to get a representative result. And so that's where, for all the folks out there, Florida, the New York Times poll and other polls predicted at least a 30-point lead for Biden already in the early vote that's been banked. What we're seeing is about a 15-point lead. So all these people that are panicking and being like, "Oh no, there's a 15-point Democratic lead," that would be like panicking when the black precinct comes in with a 50-point Democratic lead and saying, "Oh my, we're down 50 points." No, we're actually up 25 because that should have been a 75-point lead.
I got to throw something in there real quick too. Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they're in these early vote numbers that you're seeing, folks. A lot of the Democratic strongholds started first. Okay, so there's some disproportionate stuff going on there. And everything you're seeing right now is in Florida. Early voting in person hasn't even started yet. That is what typically leans Democratic. And the absentee ballots typically lean Republican. You're not going to see that this year. Not with the numbers we're getting. You're not going to see it. So just throw that kind of apples to orange, and it's not even apples to orange. It's apples to turd comparison in the trash, because it's not going to happen. And then secondly, the bottom line is you have to remember Democratic strongholds started first. A lot of them.
Exactly. And the other factor there is what the polls also predicted. And the main thing I look at this data for it predicted a surge in the youth vote, and it predicted a surge in new voters. Right now in the early voting data, the youth vote is down compared to its historic numbers and way, way down compared to the polls. It's much less. They were predicting that more young voters were going to vote early and an absentee than middle-aged voters. Well, folks, it ain't even close. The youth vote is way down compared to that. Same with new voters. The new voters are way down. Even infrequent voters are down. So all that's happening is Democrats are cannibalizing their normal vote by getting them to vote very early. And they're still why that's significant is it means this lead is not the lead that they needed it to be, because they're not getting the turnout they want. And to Richard's point,
at this point, Robert,
look at individual counties. So go to a place like Collier County in Florida.
Yeah.
Go to a place like Monroe County. Go to these other counties, and what you'll generally find outside of Minnesota, where Democrats appear to have well organized across the entire state.
Yeah, they are. That's a statewide party thing. They are. Yeah.
For folks that don't know, that's not a surprise.
That's not national Democrats. Those are state.
Minnesota's had broad state, because the Democratic Party in Minnesota, unlike frankly every other state these days, it was founded in rural Minnesota.
That's right. Populist.
Still very, very strong organizationally there. So it's not a surprise that they would do well across the board. But in places like Florida, you can look at like a Collier County or a Dixie County, and they can't get Democrats to vote in some of these counties. Yeah. You're looking at some of these panhandle counties are going to look like East Texas. You're going to see numbers. Trump may break 90 in some of these counties.
I was just going to say that in Collier County, they're telling us that they're going to crush their numbers disproportionately to 2018. And for people who don't know, that's one of the reasons why DeSantis and Scott held on, even though they underperformed in Pinellas and lost Pinellas, and underperformed in Monroe too, is that the Collier, while some of the other counties were coming in at 52, 55%, Collier County came in at like 70 or something. And they're saying they're going to crush it, Robert, in like double digit disproportionately in representation. And because I doubted them in 2018. You remember this? I doubted it. It was 11:30 in the morning. And they were like, yep, we're about to hit our target for the day. And the rest is just money, baby. It's money. And I'm like, no way. It wasn't noon. And they beat it. And I was like, oh my God, these people were not lying to me. And Laura and I just watched armies marching, just armies, to get these two elected. Why? Because they embraced Donald Trump. And they wanted it. Republicans in Florida, they wanted it to be a referendum on Donald Trump, because we had two candidates that were pro-Trump. They were not doing what others were doing, which was fence sitting and trying to like equivocate. Oh, maybe I support him one day, maybe I don't. They were always on the Trump wagon, and they wanted to reward them for it. That was it. I'm serious. And in Florida, if you remember, folks, we heard the same thing. Gillum's got too many votes banked. It's over. It's over, right? And I even went through Politico coverage. I did a rewind, and I did a Politico live blog rewind coverage. They were at 7:30 at night. It's not possible. Independents are going too much for Andrew Gillum, and there's just no way Republicans can get that vote out. And then they went dark at 8:30 and didn't say another word till 1:30 in the morning because it was obvious. They were jumping up and down, happy, you know?
The other key number I track in the internals, because I'm more of an internals guy than a top line guy when it comes to polls.
Me too, actually. Yeah.
Is I believe all of your polls have now shown it either very close or in many cases Trump ahead amongst independent voters in swing states.
In Pennsylvania, he took the lead. He was down, and he was down in Ohio too, which is why not overall, just among independents. And that's why I want to get back in Ohio.
When polls are wrong, partially they'll get the wrong Republicans and wrong Democrats. Basham went into detail about this. That he said the first Republican who answers your phone
is a Bill Kristol.
Yes,
that's true. Yeah, he's right. If he said that, he's right.
And then, but here's the fascinating thing: when polls otherwise go wrong, in my view, historically, because they're aware of the partisan profile issue, partisan weighting issue, it's they get independents wrong. They get the wrong independents, and this is
and that's what Nate did in Florida.
And by the way, that's what's happening again in 2020. He has Biden winning independents in Pennsylvania by more than 20 points.
Yeah. I didn't look at his representation, Robert, but he was ahead too. And then if you remember us talking about it live and stuff was still coming in, I can't see as it's coming in rough like that until I get it in market site. Philadelphia was 18% of the vote.
Yeah.
No crap.
Right.
Put Philadelphia 12%, and then it changes quite a bit.
Oh yeah, well, once you properly weight it. But by getting a representative sample of independent voters from across the geographic, economic, cultural spectrum, realizing that you can't just get a rural and proportionate vote if that rural vote is not representative of the rural vote, actual rural vote.
That's when it dawned on me he didn't know what he was doing. When he responded with that response, I was like, "Oh my God, he really doesn't." And he doesn't know.
Like if I asked any of them, Nate Silver, Nate Cohn, Harry Enton, Elliot Morris, how do you think the Norwegian vote is trending? They wouldn't even understand why I'm asking the question. So they just have no idea. That's why they've never mentioned the anti-war issue. They don't know there's a difference between Minnesota and Mississippi.
Another one.
Yep. They have no clue. They don't know which groups trend together and which group. I mean, that's how Nate Cohn could be proud of his map of look at where we got people and look at where they swung and I'm glad he did it because it was very transparent and helped me, but he didn't understand this is a screaming red flag that you have a horrible unrepresentative sample.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know.
Let's compare Florida. Let's compare the difference in Florida because I still have these maps up loaded. All right, we got a couple of minutes. Let's do this. And then, by the way, before we bug out, I want to talk about Arizona, what people want me to ask. I think we should drop some of the questions we asked in the Rust Belt because there's really no point, right? So there's the difference between our polling and Nate's polling in the state of Florida. You can see that he not only missed the panhandle quite a bit, it's not because of there shouldn't be that many blue dots in the
Go up that Gulf Coast portion.
That's right.
There's only one blue dot. That's like Dixie County. Those counties, by the way, for folks that don't know, went for Trump by 60 to 70 to 80 points. Yeah. And according to his poll, if you did a map of the counties, he would have Dixie County going 100% for Joe Biden.
I know. And then what he tries to do is with that, those samples, folks, that aren't representative, he tries to extrapolate out. So, you can't do that. You just simply can't do it. The point we're making is you need adequate samples, representative samples for each subgroup. Because if you try to extrapolate out, and this is not hypothetical. What I'm saying here is not hypothetical. This is tested. I have emails to Jerry Willis in 18 talking about why he is going to be wrong in Florida. He will miss by 6 points. I mean, it was dead on. It's not hypothetical. So he should have been able to go back and say, this is why we were wrong. But he just didn't get it. He just doesn't understand.
I mean, basically, if you look at that map and if you cut off the actual panhandle and then you look at the whole rest of the central part up until Jacksonville, he is predicting that part of the state, which is about 6% of the total vote, that part of the state is going massively, probably 40 points for the Democrats.
Yeah.
40 points for Trump. And this is the same white, rural, working class vote he's missing everywhere.
Yep. And by the way, the storyline with his polling in 2018 in Florida was that Andrew Gillum was going to do much better in Miami. He was going to do much better in that northern part of the state, not only in the Panhandle, on the way to the Panhandle, because you see where he polled. He polled Gainesville, folks, and he polled right outside of it. That's my neck of the woods.
He got the only Democratic areas in northern.
Yes.
The other. Look at how he's got literally what I call Gator Country, the Central Everglades. He literally has nobody. It looks like
he got a few independents, and that's it.
That's it. He managed to not find a single Republican in Gator Country.
And he got a lot of, it looks like those are undecideds too, those empties.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, guys, that's because he called them on the phone. They're not undecided. They're full of crap. He called them on the phone. He did not give them anonymity, and they didn't want to talk to some yup from the New York Times or their pollster. So they told him briefly, no doubt, this is how it went. I'm undecided. How much do you make? 30 to 40 or 30 to 50? I mean, it was one of those breeze through phone calls. Who do you trust better on this? I don't know. Undecided. Who do you trust on? I don't understand. That's what they do to you. And that, they're full of crap. And that's what they'll do, though. And the reason why he got a 20-point margin for Andrew Gillum instead of more like a 5 to 10, which is what it really was, is because of where he called. And I'm talking about 20-point independent margin, because he's calling those independents that now when you fill in the rest of the state, as we did, you can clearly see that's when that independent margin closes to like 3 to 7, 5 to 10. That's what it is. He's just not reaching representation. By the way, Andrew Gillum did not perform that well in Miami-Dade. He didn't.
No, exactly. And it was one of the things he failed to predict, because you see what he did is he got an over Democratic sample from the Cuban vote in 2018, just like he did again in 2020.
He just did it now. That's why that's exactly what he did. And he will be wrong again. It will not be Biden +5 or Gillum +6. It'll be DeSantis by 1 and Trump by 2. That's what it's going to be.
Another great analysis by Basham.
Rough. I'm saying
the only guys getting into Basham's done a bunch of Miami polling, shows the same thing as what your polling has shown, which he's talking. He goes, it's like the 1980s. You're having Cuban and Venezuelan voters vote like communism is back on the ballot. And
they view it to be, though. In fact, Robert, they do. When you talk to them,
like
they
think
it is
the FIU poll. Democrats probably should have had a little less pro-immigration stand when it came to Cubans and Venezuelans, because
wet foot, dry foot, or whatever it is. Yeah,
exactly. A wet foot, dry foot. The new voter, the new Cuban and new Venezuelan voter,
heavily Republican.
Trump, exactly, massively Trump, and leans Republican because they're super sensitive to the issues of communism, socialism, that kind of idea. So that's why he said he thought the biggest county that may move in Florida will be Miami-Dade. Because
I could agree with that, actually.
Run double digits. And again, this goes back to how to analyze early voting and other things. Folks, it's the margins. If you're a Democrat and you don't come out of Miami-Dade with a 35-point lead, you're in trouble in the state.
Yeah, we got it right now. Trump is at 39. We had Trump at 39. That's up from 34. Biden's only at 53. Let's assume he gets the vast majority of those undecideds. That's still shy of Hillary Clinton, and we're talking about could be an 80,000 vote swing there because of that.
And for folks to know, the undecideds generally break the way their local group breaks. So that's where, if you're in a Trump area, a lot of those undecideds are going to end up being Trumpish, and that's part of the art of polling, is to know where these undecideds are likely to go based on their underlying demographics. I made a bunch of money betting on the Labor Party overperforming in 2017 with Corbyn, because I looked at who the undecideds were, and I realized that was a likely labor to break undecided group. For Trump, in most of these swing states, overall, the undecided group looks like a Trump voter much more than a Biden voter.
It does. And it does in these. Now we have 2 states where we look at those profiles. They're both Trump voters. Now, Pennsylvania is less so than Florida, but they're disproportionately for Trump getters.
If you're Trump, is you just
Trump
want
rich,
undecided young voter, that undecided African-American voter. just stay home. You don't, just Biden's too much of a bore, right? That Trump was actually funny in 2016. He'd make that point. He goes, you hear these people say, hey, I don't care who you're going to vote for. Just get out and vote. I don't say that. If you're not going to vote for me, stay home.
Stay the hell home. Yeah.
That's just old school honesty was great, but that's all he needs. The other problem I realized with likely voter models, they're assuming a likely voter is someone who voted not even if they didn't vote in 2016, is if they voted in 2008 or 2012.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake because Obama got a unique turnout that is abnormal. That's not repeatable. And what they should be looking at is demographics of 2000 and 2004, because that's what this election looks more like. Youth vote's going to be down.
We're going to go back and grab those 100 or so undecideds from Florida. We're going to go back and hit them up again. And hey, remember us? Have you decided yet? And then from there, we'll have a pretty good idea. Orlando, Atlantic Coast. Remember I brought that up before? That's, I'm rounding here. Trump 47, Biden 43. That was a slightly, they said it was tied. We gave it slightly a point to Hillary. So that's like depending on what you believe with exit polling, that's a 4 to 5 point swing in Trump's favor. Another tremendous amount of votes there. The one against him, Rob, is 46-43 in Tampa Bay. So Biden +3 in Tampa Bay area. Now that's Hillsborough mostly is doing that.
That's just because there's an increased Puerto Rican vote share there. So you would expect, so even if Trump does better amongst Puerto Ricans, he still loses Puerto Ricans by large margins. So the more Puerto Rican a community is, the more Democratic it will be. But by the way, the other thing is the voter registration, and this is like what a good pollster does, cross-check against voter registration trends, other things. Is this consistent? Donor profiles. Is this consistent with other things we're seeing? And what your poll is showing is consistent with the voter registration trends in Florida. In other words, seeing the Atlantic trend toward Trump, you're trend Republican. You're seeing Collier County and some of those counties trend toward Republican. Remember, as a whole, Florida has had more Republican gains than it has ever had.
Oh, man.
And
this is why, Robert, at this point, the idea, what they're missing with the early vote, let's pretend they are up 400,000. That's about 50 shy of where they typically need to be. That's about 50,000 up of where but they don't have the pool to draw. They don't have the pool. Where's the pool?
And problem number two, by their own self-reported polling, if it was accurate, the polling said, New York Times poll said when I translate into votes that they had already banked 800,000 net votes in Florida.
Well, that's impossible.
And the entire Biden lead was that. And it turns out it's less than half that. That means they're screwed. If I'm a Democrat right now, and I was seeing those early voting, I would be panicking.
Yeah.
But because they live in such tiny echo chambers, I had people saying, "Where are you getting this voter file info? There isn't voter file on Michigan or Wisconsin." It's like, wow, people really don't know how vendors work. And then people are like, how could you possibly guess my politics? Folks, I can stick in your name and tell you what you were subscribing to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the voter file is greatly detailed. I had some guy who only
more than 400 data points on the one we use. There's more than 400. It's not just political. Yeah, it's not just political. I know if you subscribe to Field and Stream, folks. I know if you're an NRA member, and we have consumer files, which we cross with you. I know where you donated, all right? I know who you donated to, how much you donated. I don't think you understand the era of big data, all right? So like when this is why when the Trump campaign about a month and a half ago by now probably, said, well, this is how we're going to make up the gap in Minnesota. There's this wealth of working men you all don't know about. And I was like, sounded like a losing campaign to me. That's how I walked away. Then I went home, then I popped it open, and I was like, oh my God, they are there. And there was like about 260,000 of them. And that's, guys, in Minnesota, that's a huge difference.
There was a bunch of rural working class vote. And this is like when people were challenging me on the voter registration trend data. I said, folks, in 2018, Democrats whipped by 2-1 Republicans in late voter registration data in Pennsylvania. Now Republicans are winning 3-1 in late voter registration data. It's always been predictive. All across the country, the rural working class white male supporter of Trump. This was even true in Texas, for example. Like you'd have the urban upscale areas voted 90% of 2016 in 2018 in Texas. Rural working class areas voted 70 to 75.
Yeah.
And all of that vote that didn't show up were Trump voters. And they're coming out and they're coming back and they're coming big.
Yeah, it's this idea, like, there's part of this assume that the Trump vote is not going to show up. Like,
Yeah.
this is nuts. The
Themselves-
most enthusiastic certain voter is a male working man who supports Donald Trump. I don't think people understand the gap we're talking about.
Basham confirmed that. Trafalgar has confirmed that. All the behavioral data confirms that. The ratings confirm that. Yard signs, rally size, social media activity, voter registration trends, presidential primary participation rate. Every single data point supports that. And the economic data that people can get if they're part of People's Pundit Daily and subscribe. All look at the industries they care about. Energy bouncing back, construction bouncing back, housing bouncing back. Places where working class white men disproportionately work, who know that under Trump, they were achieving more results than they had ever seen.
Just today, the Philly Fed, just today, which will be up on PBD soon, and a comparison of that in the Empire State. We have been on this theme because it's true. The economic recovery we have seen post-pandemic is going on despite intentional sabotage efforts. Yeah. So when you see the Empire State Manufacturing Survey, pretty solid, but definitely not as strong as it could have been, compare it to the Manufacturing Survey in Pennsylvania, tripling almost, or doubling this time. Last month, it tripled the forecast. Now, double the forecast. You can see where it's like those industries can't be held back as easily as someone like, well, that, is under Cuomo and under de Blasio, because those areas, which are not really Trump areas, they weren't, they weren't benefited. They didn't get big part of the boom. Pennsylvania in 2018, the GDP story was amazing in 2018, and it was almost exclusively due to the bounce back in goods producing and natural resource and mining. And that's, unbelievably beneficial. And we actually, for people who care, if you type in Pennsylvania GDP, I'm sure it'll pop right up. We showed you the difference between PA GDP under Obama versus under Donald Trump. Just a stark difference. You're telling me those people aren't going to show up for him when they tell us at 90% they're coming? 90%?
They're telling you that. They're telling Basham that. They're telling Trafalgar that. They're actually doing it in their president. Remember, folks, Trump tripled the presidential primary vote of George W. Bush.
Yep.
Tripled it.
He crushed Obama.
And it was mostly pushed and mostly fed. He got 50% more than even Obama got. And one sign that Obama was going to do well in 2012 was the one group that was turning out in 2012 in the presidential primary.
Yeah, that's true.
Were African-American voters.
African-Americans, yep.
Where did Trump get this 18 million plus primary voters? Even with a bunch of states canceling their primary?
With the pandemic, Robert. If the pandemic didn't happen, we would have saw more than that. There's no doubt.
And if all the states had voted, there were several that just canceled their primary. He would have broke 20 million.
Yeah.
It was working class areas. Notably, it was the same areas that were down for Democrats. Working class Democratic participation was down. African American primary participation was down. Youth vote primary participation was down. While blue collar, white, non-Hispanic, over 55, over 45, your Gen X, younger boomers, they were dramatically up compared to their normal primary participation rate, compared to W and 2. If you take a look at precincts and look at counties,
yeah.
Compare W04 to Trump 2020, you find almost all of the gap is in working class areas where there's massive jumps in participation. They're telling you they're going to turn out. They have actually turned out in primaries. They have turned out in voter registration. And Democrats are sticking their head in the sand that even when the early vote is coming back in places like Monroe County, 2-1, 3-1 in favor of Trump, they're like, oh, no, these voters aren't going to vote.
37.1. R plus 37.1. And another, I told the viewers earlier in the show before you hopped on, if we were going to see the kind of defecting that we saw in some of these polls, we would have saw it in New Hampshire. There was that is the state, folks. Everybody knows this. That is the state to make a stand against an incumbent and to expose some kind of weakness that he may have. And there was an organized effort, state, local, and federal Republicans who hate Donald Trump, never Trump, the Lincoln people, all of them. They made their stand and they got clobbered.
Exactly. William Weld is folks. The guy running the challenge was William Weld, longtime governor of Massachusetts,
neighboring state.
Ron Johnson, libertarian vice presidential candidate. Yeah, and was well known in New Hampshire.
Very well.
Boston media market dominates New Hampshire, and yet he got crushed, humiliated.
Trump beat Reagan's record. Reagan was the record holder. Then behind him was Bill Clinton, and then Barack Obama. That was 1, 2, 3. And then it was very clear in the night he was going to overtake Barack Obama, and it was only a matter of how much in Manchester were they, because that's really where they tried. They tried hard as hell in Manchester, but Trump did far better in Manchester than people thought. Let's get real. Come on. They thought,
Obama did in 2012. And Obama had literally no name challengers. I actually worked for one of the guys that was
literally no namers.
Lawyer. I mean, but yeah, no name totally. And Obama didn't break 90%. Yeah. So now he was in core African-American precincts, showing that his core low turnout base was going to be high. And that, by the way, is the group to look at. Frank Luntz is out there making the exact same mistake a bunch of Republicans made in 2012, which is not, are you enthusiastic about vote or for your candidate, but it's a question that says, are you enthusiastic about voting, which tends to be a less useful question.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it's candidate specific. But putting that aside,
that's why we don't ask enthusiasm to undecideds.
Exactly. That's number one. And you ask them about voting for their candidate enthusiastic as opposed
your
to
preferred candidate. That's how it's worded.
Which is much more important. It needs to be candidate specific. But last but not least, partisan gap is not a helpful measurement. So the fact that you're telling me post-college, upper middle class Democrats are twice as excited as upper middle class post-college Republicans tells me nothing at all, because both of them always vote in a presidential election.
Always.
In 2012, for folks out there, this is where Romney's people were misled. They had a Republican gap over Democrats because your upper middle class Republican, your senior Republican, was more excited than your upper middle class senior Democrat in 2012. But that didn't matter because it was inconsequential. They were both going to vote anyway. The groups that you needed to look at enthusiasm for was working class white Republicans versus African American Democrats.
Left about 6 million of them on the table.
The gap was just the opposite. You had record high African-American enthusiasm.
Exactly right.
You had very low working class rural enthusiasm and working class blue collar enthusiasm, period. I was looking at the precincts in Philadelphia, in Southeast Philadelphia, Northeast Philly, both blue collar, historically a lot of Italians. The Obama didn't improve his vote there. It was just McCain voters disappeared in a whole bunch of precincts.
They vanished.
And that's who got back. But so that's why don't look at partisan gap for that kind of question. Look at who is a group of voters that's you want to know whether that low turnout group is excited. And there, the race gap, the age gap heavily favors Trump.
This is also why I think that the gender gap may not be as big this time, because
the same thing, by the way. He said
there's some
biggest share of men in the electorate. Probably.
I've never seen this before.
And for folks that don't know, men used to outvote women in the 50s, 60s.
Years ago.
These men used to dominate the polls. That started to switch in the late 80s, early 90s. The media, of course, attributed it to the rise of Democratic women. That's not really accurate. What happened was two things. One, women became accustomed to voting as a historical tendency. But there was a generational shift of female voter participation, is the main thing. So there were people that before women could vote only voted somewhat when they got the right to vote. And then the next two generations voted at lower levels. Once you had a third generation of women who were completely accustomed to everybody they knowing voting as a woman, they tended to outvote men. Also, what happened was blue-collar working-class men started becoming skeptical.
They dropped off. They did. They dropped off. And that was,
Vice,
a big part of it.
Set of interviews. Vice went up and interviewed, surprisingly, the Iron Range mayors. And listen to them, because they are describing exactly, and these are all those Democratic mayors. There were
That's
6.
where we're seeing it.
Now there's 9 up to 10. And they will give you the description of what Richard's getting in the polls of why they're going to vote Trump. And they explain that they understand the balance. They're like, one, they don't blame him for what happened with the pandemic lockdowns in terms of its economic effects. And they know that he hasn't achieved all the things he set out to achieve. But they're like, he's the only guy in forever who actually cares who
Yeah.
actually gives a damn. Who's going to
They feel like their vote matters now. That's the best way I could sum it up.
exactly. They're going to pour out for him because this is the first guy to say he's going to do something for them in forever, and that's why they're going to pour out for him in respect of that.
You see the trust on handling of issues in Pennsylvania when it came to trade negotiations and U.S.-China relations. Oh, man. So coronavirus and healthcare were big gaps for Biden. That's his strong suit. But when you talk about what gets these men out, it's not coronavirus. All right. I mean, it's trade relations, trust with even to some of them are national security was kind of important, but really it was trade and China. And Trump has got to, he didn't have that focus on it this year like he did in 2016. But this year's a little different than 2016 because, you say an incumbent has a record. But now they can say, maybe some of them got out, maybe some of them didn't in 2016. He disproportionately got out his vote where it mattered. He's very, what's the word I'm looking for? He's very efficient. Is a good word. Yeah, okay. That's exactly. He puts it out where it matters. And these voters now are looking and they're saying, you know what? This went the way he said it was going to go. And if we give it back to Biden, that's all over. So my vote matters this time. That's why I think he is as strong as he is in Allegheny, and outside that area. And by the way, Nate Cohn has the Gore counties. The Democrats haven't won these counties since Al Gore. All right. Here's the Southwest of Pennsylvania. This is 2004. This is 2008 when McCain lost. Here's 2012 when Romney lost. And here's 2016 when Trump won. Well, and he's saying it's all going to Biden.
Look at that. All these central counties are going to swing. All of Appalachian coal country is going to swing. Like, he has Cambria County actually going back to Biden.
Yeah, he does. And center is like light blue in our poll, by the way.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, and the reason for center being close by for everybody, and somebody pointed this out to Cohn, that all of his center county is split. You have Penn State, about half the vote, and the other half the vote's the rest of rural working class. And I can tell you there's probably what they call a town gown split, like there was in New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
That what happens when you have that kind of population it tends to polarize the rest of the population against whatever you think.
Yeah.
The rule of physics often applies to politics.
Yeah, it's so right. Opposite and equal reaction. That's so true, man.
Trigger an equal and opposite reaction. It's the reason why immigration is a net loser for Democrats, because for every new vote you add or hope to add,
piss somebody else off.
Mad about you doing that.
Yeah.
And there's more of them than there are of the new voters.
In immigration, Robert, in Pennsylvania, it was huge. In Florida, trust to handle issues on immigration, too, was big for Trump. That was Trump by 10 in Florida. In Pennsylvania, it's similar by 10, roughly. While we have the views, let me just say, guys, while we're talking about Arizona, we're going to start polling Arizona. We'll poll it tonight, Friday, Saturday. Oh, go ahead.
I would say one last addendum on Pennsylvania before we jump into Arizona.
Okay.
The Polish vote. That was one of the key voter groups I was watching.
Trump
20 plus in that group, very working class group. That tells you how they're going to vote. There's a big Polish vote in outside Detroit.
German too.
A real big one in outside of South Milwaukee. That tells you that Trump is going to do very, very well amongst a key, because that Polish group, by the way, it used to be 20 to 30 points Democratic reliably.
Right.
So that it's going for Trump by 20 in a place like Pennsylvania is a sign of how that is a representative sample of how that important ethnic and co-ethnic groups like them are going to vote in the rest of the state.
English were a bit overrepresented. And when we found those English voters, most of them, of course, were in the Southeast, but they were scarcely populated around. Biden was getting that English vote. They were overrepresented. That's all on the crosstab sheet on Google Sheets. If you guys want to look, we actually put the ancestry vote out there. You can look under weights, and I believe it's under weights. Yes. And if you look in participation distribution, there's also region. That's also under weights. But if you go down, you'll see nationality. Dutch, 2%. English, 17. That's about 6 points too high. I'm sorry, but it is. I even know it's my own poll. 20. I just didn't want to weight too heavily. You don't weigh for ancestry. German, 25. That's about right. That's pretty much right on the money. Trump was carrying Germans.
His head again amongst Germans, very good too.
Very heavy. Yeah.
Catholics, the basis of the Democratic vote. German Protestants more of a mix, but in the Midwest, So this is where if you read Kevin Phillips' Merging Republican Majority, you know how to. And so the key reason why Richard did this ancestral breakdown was to get, again, a representative sample of subgroups that are important across the Midwest. And when you see Trump winning polls, winning Germans, doing fine with Irish and Italians, that all of these are historically, ancestrally Democratic groups. That means that Nate Cohn's polls are totally wrong. And it also means that Trump is where he needs to be with key groups. Of course, it's not my favorite ancestral group, which you find heavily in Tennessee, where when they ask him what ancestry they say American. That's their only.
Yeah, we did get some of those. We put them in other. We did get some of those, and they're in the census, Robert. You know.
That's where you get like Southwest, the Appalachia, some of those areas where you'll get somebody be ancestry. What are you asking me? I'm an American. So that's a favorite group of mine. Very big. Trump in the primaries, you could track how well he was going to do in a county by how high the percentage of that county said that their ancestry was American. It's just an old working class. A lot of them are actually Scotch Irish, by the way, but they just claim to be American. But
Trump's winning Dutch double digits. He's down among English by 6, which isn't that bad, but it is a big group there. You would expect that to be a Democratic vote. Scottish, Trump is
mainland group. That's your mainline. For folks that don't remember, when they say Protestants, they mean mainline. That language comes from the main line of the streetcar that upscale portions of Philadelphia. That's the only place where Biden is trending well. But somebody was asking me, man, do you think he can outdo that suburban vote, upscale Philly suburban vote that's breaking more for Biden than even Hillary? I was like, folks, we already have a test example, the voter registration.
Yeah.
Added 100,000 in the Philly suburbs, and in the rest of the state, they lost by 300,000.
Yep.
300,000 is still more than 100,000.
And last time I checked, he's killing among Scottish, which is telling me a lot about, the rest of Pennsylvania in the areas, by the way, where Nate Cohen's map is blue. In central and western, there's a lot of Scots there. And Trump is winning. I mean, it's 16-3. 16-3, folks. It's a big margin.
Scottish, the kind of voter that's Polish, they're telling you of a certain working class swing voter. So the
Irish, 20 points.
Exact same thing. Scotch Irish, very heavy throughout all of Appalachia.
Yep.
So in fact, they helped settle the frontier country.
They did. That's where we get that accent from. That's from the Scott Irish accent.
That led to aspects of the Constitution, but they were really in my view, they're just trying to make the revolution read in the words it was written in. But that's another story. That's Western Pennsylvania, folks. That's where the Whiskey Rebellion came.
Absolutely, and that's the accent that the Stu Rothenbergs, some of these people are from like more affluent areas of the country in those states, though, and so they actually very much look down on these people, and they mock them. Those are the ones that they mock. Polish, Trump has a 20-point lead with polls. I mean, it's a big lead, man. 57-37. It's a big deal, Robert.
That Scotch Irish mindset, they still celebrate the Whiskey Rebellion in Western Pennsylvania.
And his lead is as big, almost as big with them as it is with polls.
Exactly.
So,
those are the groups you want to take a look at because they'll be representative of larger groups. It's not just to get Pennsylvania, but a sense of these groups are going to be impactful in large parts of swing states in the Midwest, the border South. And so like Northern Florida, for example, heavy Scotch Irish, heavy American ancestry, things of that nature. If Trump was going to win the Midwest again, then in the industrial Midwest, then he was going to be doing well amongst Poles. He was going to be doing well amongst Scottish. He was going to be doing well amongst Scotch Irish. He was going to be holding own amongst Germans. He was going to be.
He's winning Germans. He's winning them 7 points.
Irish and Italian. And by the way,
that's even now. Italians are even, and I think we're wrong. I think if we would have collected more in Bucks where we wanted to collect, we didn't get the geographic location exactly how we wanted. I believe if we would have, you would see them with like a 52-48 kind of spread among, without independence.
Folks, those are groups that Democrats need to win by double digits historically to win.
Yeah, they do. That's right. I mean, his best group, Biden's best group outside of non-white voters, of course, is the French, where he's got like a big lead, but they're not that big. We're talking about 2% of the population.
The French I care about is the French Canadians, and that's not what's in Pennsylvania.
No, that's not the same kind of. Those are the castaway French. You're thinking Maine, of course, and those are the ones that are in Pennsylvania. They look at the ones in Maine as like outcasts. You know.
the Quebecois, the French
Quebecois, yeah.
settled the northern parts of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, and then a bunch of them went down and became Cajun country, Acadians in Southwest Louisiana. They're the working class French voter.
That's right.
It's trending heavily Trumpish.
And Trump's getting 25% overall anyway.
Everywhere else where you have, everywhere else you have French is your cafe crowd kind. So I don't care about them.
Sandinista on steroids. And then, of course, the Dutch, which will be right outside those southeastern counties. That's a 15-point margin right now for Trump, roughly. So you guys can look at all that on the crosstabs. Very interesting stuff, But do you want to add something like that? I mean, with Arizona, I don't know. Maybe we'll spitball this a little bit. It's 12:30, so before it launches tonight, we can spitball too on the side. But we can keep generally
Ancestry less impactful for Arizona.
It isn't. I mean, we could if they
want to know
about Hispanics, we could break down a Latino detail if you want. Mexican, Puerto Rican,
American, in
there.
Now, the only question I would add for Arizona is degree of immigration. In other words, are they a first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation? I know Pew has a question that you could probably model.
Just among Hispanics, or because we could, and also I was thinking about in-state movers. Are you, how long have you lived in Arizona, kind of thing? Have you moved there from out of state in the last whatever?
Yep. I would say though, because otherwise the natural demographics of education and ethnicity and geography will be pretty good. But I think new residents and the degree to which the Hispanic vote is connected to immigration will be pertinent.
And if you guys want to support that effort, the Public Polling Project, and I really would love to circle back and at least hit the states we did already again, at least one more time before the election, that would be great. I mean, the better we can do, then that's fantastic. If you want to do that, you can by popular request. We did get Venmo, which raised about $700 or something so far. Every little bit counts, right? I mean, it does. So that would be Venmo.com/People's Pundit, or you could do the PayPal way we've been doing it, which is PayPal.me/People's Pundit. And they're all in the description on YouTube. PayPal.me/People's Pundit and Venmo.com/People's Pundit. And again, that's on YouTube. If you want to see the breakdown with money, we're going to do that tomorrow on Free Will on Friday on Inside the Numbers, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll also give you a bit of an idea. I'm glad we're polling Arizona now, because here we go again. Three very different viewpoints. One, Biden's running away with Arizona, which is your media university poll like Monmouth and New York Times. Then you have somebody who's a bit on the outside with a Democratic lean, though, which is Ohio Predictive Insights. They got Biden +3, well within the margin. And then you have others like Data for Progress. NBC News is one media, but they're an outlier, Trump +1. And then Trafalgar, Trump +4. I'm curious where we follow in that. Data for Progress has done a very good job polling heavily Hispanic populations. They did in the primary where others failed. And every criticism that we've leveled, by the way, folks, is not just toward the general election and Republican versus Democrats. Go back and look at the polling in the Democratic primary in 2020. It was a bomb almost everywhere. And how? Where were the mistakes? Among these groups that we have been highlighting to you. Data for Progress was the only one to get Nevada correctly. They were the only one. They were the only one who saw that. There were still Biden leads, Robert, up until the day of the caucus. In Iowa, there was still, Monmouth still had Biden up by like 7 or something crazy. He got creamed. In New Hampshire, he got creamed. I mean, it was ridiculous. Nobody saw the working voter. Nobody saw the more rural voter. And that's because you cannot extrapolate to compensate for being too small, Until I always say this, and of course I'm making a reference to something. Bigger is better in the world of polling. It is, all right? Maybe not everywhere, but in the world of polling, bigger is better. And you can't extrapolate to compensate. You just can't do it. Otherwise, you end up like with a Gillum +6 in Florida, and you look foolish, so that's the way it works. So what are we going to add? Residency, right? How long? And I'll go back and I'll look at the exit polls, how they ask it. This way it's comparable.
And And then the Pew question about degree of connection to immigration, because at least Pew in 20, they're not asking it, unfortunately, in 2020, but in 2016, it was extremely revelatory, because what it revealed was if you were third generation or more removed, and those, if you didn't have if you yourself weren't a first generation or second generation immigrant, and you yourself didn't have family or friends that were, then you were trending massively for Trump in 2016.
You got the wording on that question? Do you have the wording?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
cool.
find it.
Cool, because I'd like that. I like that. We used to ask something like that in Virginia, by the way. Are you a first, second, third generation Virginian? Republicans are killing it. Three generations and older. It's that first generation. They just moved there or just born, from the first family, whatever. But if you're the old Dominion, then you're a Republican still. If you're the new Dominion, and then you're a Democrat. And unfortunately for Republicans, there's just too much of a lifeblood in North Virginia to D.C. Because you remember Loudoun County years ago used to be a Republican bastion, Rob, right? Republicans used to net ridiculous vote shares in the era of George W. Bush out of Loudoun County, and now it's Democrat. It's not the same, but I have friends who live there, and their families have been there for generations. They're still all Republican. They're telling me it's the newbies who come in from New York, who come in from wherever, and that's an immigration, by the way, did take a toll on Virginia. It did.
Oh, yes.
People will say it did not. There's no, in fact, even with the government worker, crowd, Virginia would be competitive, or, if the new population wasn't there, and migration, immigration.
The immigrants in Virginia are 3-1 Democratic.
Yeah. It's too much to handle when you allow that to go on for 3 decades.
It's a wide range of groups, so it's not just it's not heavily Hispanic. Actually, it's a wide range of other groups that immigrated to Virginia. Did
I tell you about my cab driver in DC? He was so funny, man. He was like completely on the Trump train. He was a packy, and he was completely on the Trump train, and he's like calling Biden a senile old fool, and he's like, we all, everyone I work with, we all love Trump, man. It's so stupid white women, man, in Loudoun County, you get rid of them. He's like, you get rid of them, this is a red state, man, don't blame us, man. He was so funny. I was rolling in the back seat. I was laughing so hard, it was like belly hurt laughing. But he was like, my whole damn family's going to vote for Donald Trump, And he's like, some of them can't vote. Some of them can. Everyone who can will vote, for him. It's these, the people I drive around in all day, the Karens, he's saying, in Loudoun County. And he just had me roll. It was so funny. But, that's part of that is true. Is what he's saying is valid, at least in part. That happened over time. That was not always like that in that area. Those were, those sweater vest Republicans years ago, and now they're your typical yuppie liberal. All right. Generations change. All right. Yeah. So we'll do that, and we'll drop. Let me just take a real quick look. So we have the registered voter screen. We will do the likely voter screen. We'll do voting intention, whether they already voted by absentee ballot, mail, early voting, plan to vote before election day by absentee ballot or early voting, plan to vote on election day. We'll do the same thing because it's relevant. And for people who don't know, 80% of the vote in Arizona typically is already in, if the election were held today, who would you vote for? We'll do I got to change that because Pennsylvania kicked Hawkins off the ballot. So we got to change that. But we have question banks, folks. For those of you who don't know, I can't type this up every damn time. So we have question banks, and I just draw it in from the question bank. And sometimes you have to adjust it. We'll ask is your vote, like Robert said before, more a vote for your preferred candidate or more a vote against? And then how enthusiastic are you about voting for your preferred candidate? And we ask that only of the decided voters. There's an undecided follow-up. I'm just going to run through this real quick because, God, we're over, but people are still watching. Although I do have to bounce shortly. Undecided. As of today, are you leaning more towards voting for any of the following candidates or not? And 2 states now, Robert, they are leaning towards Trump. 2 states.
For Arizona, I would Well, I think a lot of the substantive questions are policy questions are not necessary for them or very indicative. I do think the shy Trump question is probably good for Arizona too.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Well, and here, I'll share the screen so everybody can see what I'm looking at here. We'll call this one, as sticking with the nicknames that we always do at Big Data Poll. We love the state nicknames, right? So we'll call this one the Grand Canyon Battleground Poll. All right. Even though there's some states have multiple nicknames, but I like the Grand Canyon one. So there's the lean question. We'll ask about voter expectation again. I just threw that in. I'm not sure that matters in Arizona, but we could. Approval rating, which for Trump in Pennsylvania, we didn't even talk about that. In Pennsylvania, Trump's approval rating was 49%.
I don't know if you want
that high.
out, but like I might replace for Arizona congressional ballot question with the Senate question.
Yes. Oh my goodness. How could I almost forget Mark Kelly? I can do both if you want this way, because Arizona's it's so small as far as county by county and district by district. It's small. We can actually get generic ballots for the districts because there are. It depends who you talk to. One, maybe two competitive districts. I know a lot of my liberal friends who are pundits have no belief that the House is in play at all. And then I have my conservative friends who are overly optimistic, who think the House is coming back. And then you have the people in the middle who think that there's always a chance if an incumbent is reelected, there's always it's almost assured that he will gather back some of his losses from the first thump he took in the incumbent first term midterm.
Yeah, by historical metrics, when an incumbent lost a lot of vote or lost 5% or more compared to the presidential vote to the first midterm, every incumbent in the past has done 7 points better, and the House vote has been 7 points better for their party in their reelection effort,
which would put it at like D+1, which means some serious gains. It would, because Republicans only need to win by a few points to rock the map.
Close, Republicans likely take the House unless incumbency comes back as a factor.
Yeah.
Incumbency did not matter in 2018, but that was the first time ever. So maybe it comes back. There is a big money edge to the House, and the Barrett bringing back pre-existing conditions probably will play out more in the House races than it necessarily will in some other ones, because essentially the Democrats' pitch is you need us Democrats in the House because we're the only guarantee that your healthcare pre-existing conditions will be protected. So if you vote Trump, okay, fine, go ahead and vote Trump, but make sure you vote Democrat in the House to protect your pre-existing conditions.
So we're going to do Senate voting preference, okay? And I'm putting this on a different page, Robert, just to throw the question in there. I'm putting this on, and by the way, you might notice all of the information you provide will be confidential and your responses are anonymous. If there are phone components, they will read off the same thing that is on the online component, okay? And everybody who did it, thank you for your contributions. To answer, it looks like his name is Al. It's venmo.com/People's Pundit, or you could do it through PayPal. PayPal.me/People's Pundit. Again, venmo.com/People's Pundit. PayPal.me/People's Pundit. And, just to give, because I can't announce everyone's name separately. So many people have given. Thanks everybody who's done making this project possible.
Absolutely. And tweet those links out so that I can tweet them. Because for folks out there, this is basically public doing it Richard's doing it at cost effectively. So the goal is to get very affordable, very accessible public polling information that's transparent so you can know what's going on. And this, by the way, the people who are watching and participating and spreading the links and messages, it's getting to Trump people. And you're seeing that reflected in strategic decisions that are being made. You're seeing it in rhetoric Trump is using.
Yeah, I didn't want to, Rob, I think you're right. I got to tell you.
Oh, absolutely. On trade and war, when we're injecting these ideas using the public opinion polling data that says trade's a winner, war, being anti-war is a winner, and getting that intel out there, it helps rebut what the media is trying to do. So Trump's people hear it, and you'll see it start to stick when you see Trump start to use it in speeches, start to show up in ads, start to show up in messaging campaigns, show up in targeted messaging campaigns, and it's already showing up in all of those four in some capacity in those key states. So this is where this information is helpful, and because Richard was one of the very few people to get 2016 right he also got 2014 and large parts of 2018 right, then there are people that pay attention to this. So like one of the reasons to do it is for your own information and edification. But the second reason for you to do it, to support this, to make it possible, is to get transparent, accountable information out into Trump world so it reflects policy and campaign decisions they make down the stretch.
That's a good. You sell it better than I do. I'll tell you what. I didn't think this would be that successful and resisted it, and now I was wrong. And I think it's fair to say at this point we're going to surpass the only other public polling project they consulted me on this was Rasmussen, who wanted to do it, and I had said, I don't know. In 2016, we fronted the money, and anything that was released in 18, which was less than 2016, we also fronted. And subscriptions at PPD kind of helped balance it out, but there's no doubt we were in the red. So I thought that it wouldn't be all that successful. I think it's fair to say we're going to be more successful than Rasmussen's public polling project at this point. We already have 3 in the bank. Already, 3. I'm talking about 3 polls are in the bank because Arizona's just about funded. Oh, Pennsylvania overhit. So we took a little, we're going to go over the numbers in detail tomorrow. It took over $1,000 from Pennsylvania, put it into Arizona to get a jump start because it was over the target. And we're going to go over that in detail tomorrow. And all right, so just to get this,
wondering, like some people say, well, how much is it short? How much is it this? That there's issues with going through GoFundMe because GoFundMe keeps people's information, a bunch of other things. We're trying to avoid that problem. If it's overfunded, the excess funds will be applied to doing New Hampshire, applied to going
down the list.
Tracking poll. So don't worry about that. So just what if you believe in this, care about this, want the Trump world to know about it, want to have this information, make whatever donation you can. It's just going to cover costs. I mean, there's no
no. And you guys will see that tomorrow.
I mean, to do that if you guys will make sure at least the costs get covered.
Yeah,
so
we covered like $400 for Florida, or $500. Laura said, I think it was something like that. I just love Florida so much, and I have such a I take Florida personally, right? So Quinnipiac's crappy polling pisses me off when it comes to Florida and others. CNN, Gillum plus 12. Nate, I think he's at least trying, right? But there's now evidence that you were horribly wrong in 2018, Nate. You were wrong in 2016 too, but you were horribly wrong in 2018. You're getting worse, not better. And here's why. Because the problems are getting worse, number one. And then you're not evolving. And you're not listening because, like you said, it really comes down, Robert, to there are problems. So I'm not on like the Rush Limbaugh train of they're doing it totally intentionally, but there is no incentive for them to get it right. CNN's pollster ORC had been with them for years. They were the closest when it came to reflecting the true state of the race in 2016. Yeah, they had Clinton winning in most areas where she didn't, but at least they showed it relatively competitive. They had Trump going to Nevada. Nevada going to Trump, even though it didn't, but that's because you would expect that. It's called the rule of outliers. And they showed at least a competitive race, and it wasn't the way that most others were showing it, and they got fired for it. So that's what that gets you. All right. And believe me, I've worked with media, candidates, corporations. The pressure can be enormous. It was never like this. And you shouldn't allow this to happen to you if you're a pollster. I have seen pollsters that I have respected over the years cave, and I think it's disgusting. But when it comes to Florida, it would be great to have a tracking poll in Florida. It's just so big and so important. That in Pennsylvania, I think really this is going to come down to. If Trump carries Florida on election night, we know we're going to the Rust Belt, because if he does, then you can rest assured North Carolina is probably in the bag, and so is Arizona, right? So that's the way I generally think that this is going, And then that brings us to the Midwest, where he will need to hold either Pennsylvania or some combo of the others, because Pennsylvania is the biggest one, biggest rich vote share coming out of Pennsylvania. All right. So we'll ask about the Senate. We'll ask about the generic ballot, top voting issues. We got our 10 that we've been keeping. We'll ask them to rank it so we can get that rank distribution score. By the way, folks, while I'm turning the page, we are going to put everything's on a spreadsheet, but we are getting a map. It's half built now. I can show you some of it if you'd like, but it's in a JS fiddle. I'm trying to put little pies over the states. All right. So just so you guys can see, I'll show you what it's going to look like. We did 2,
I'd have to kill the poll to do it. So give me a second. We'll go over this, and then I'll show you a preview of the map that's going to go on Big Data Poll. It's cool, but it's only 2 states, so it's like a gray U.S. map with Pennsylvania and Florida, and then there's pie charts. But there's a couple of things with the JavaScript that always pisses us off. We thought some programmer contacted us and said, we'll help you with that, because we've had a lot of demos just fail on us, and we wasted so much time trying to replace high charts. If somebody has some insight they want to offer us on how to make an interactive, cool map that's comparable to our election model maps, then we're all for it, you know? But here, all right, so we don't, at this point, we could ask about the Supreme Court question, or no, it's really judicial philosophy, which so far in both battlegrounds, judicial restraint has won overwhelmingly over the definition of judicial activism, and we give people the definitions. We did ask Robert about whether Amy Coney Barrett should get a hearing, or if we should wait until Joe Biden or Donald Trump hash out the presidential election and the winner gets to choose. We have found in both states Amy Coney Barrett deserves a hearing. Voters say that. So what do you think? Do you think? I mean, you got to she's already getting a hearing.
Yeah, exactly. So you can remove that question.
All right, let's kill these right here. So we'll remove them. What about packing the court?
I would keep that up because he's got the answer.
Trust to handle issues, regardless of how you intend to vote. Who do you trust more to handle these issues? That can stay. Current events and proposals. We've been doing defund the police, trust in mail-in voting, adding 2 seats to the U.S. Senate for Washington, D.C. How comfortable are you with Kamala Harris as president? And here, you guys can see how we've been asking this, because we got some criticism for having the audacity to ask this question. We say Joe Biden, 77, called himself a transition candidate, and both he and Kamala Harris have made headlines using the term Harris administration instead of Biden administration. If elected, Biden would replace Donald Trump, 74, as the oldest president to serve. How comfortable or uncomfortable would you be with Kamala Harris as president if Joe Biden was elected and could not serve out his term? I think that's perfectly fair. We will absolutely keep that on there. Everyone can kiss my butt. You ask things about tweeting with Trump and all this other stuff. That is a fair thing, because we all know, those of us who are working this business, we all know Joe Biden's not going to be president if he wins. He will not be president long. Right, Robert? I mean, does anybody even on the Democratic world that you know, is there anybody who privately won't admit they know that?
Everybody knows that at a minimum, he's a transition candidate. At a minimum, he's not going to run the show for very long.
Right. And then we ask about finances. We tailored this question to meet the day. So we could go back to the way Gallup asked, which is the old Reagan, or, you know.
I like it this way.
You like it this way? I was just going to ask you for your opinion. So keep it. I was better off than I was 4 years ago until the pandemic is an option. Okay. And when we found, by the way, when you put those two together, you get roughly the Gallup numbers, which tells you that people give you that benefit of the doubt, right? We don't need fracking in here. That can go. Is there an issue specific to Arizona you could think?
Well, I was thinking for Arizona it'd be immigration issues.
Specifically, what do you think?
I'm not sure which ones, but it'd either be the wall or, do we need to be stricter or softer on, those kind of questions, because it impacts so much of the border down there.
Okay, we'll put that on the list to replace. Let me just edit this real quick. Okay, so I'm just gonna write immigration questions, and let's go for 2. Let's shoot for 2. All right. And then I can get rid of the layout. We can get rid of that. And if we do ask something, which we might, so we might say, according to the Department of Homeland Security or Customs and Border Enforcement, this much of the wall has been built. This much is in Arizona. Do you support or oppose the effort to erect a physical barrier, the wall, on the border in Arizona? Something like that. Right.
I'll do that one, and then the only other one would be something about, do you think enforcement of our immigration laws should be stricter, stay the same, or not as, or we're being too tough, something like that.
Okay, border barrier wall. and immigration enforcement. And then I'll know from there to craft. Tough versus weak, about right, something like that, right? Something like that, right? Okay. You think the federal government has been too much, too little? And then expressing political beliefs. We're definitely keeping that one. This is a gold mine of information, right? How comfortable or uncomfortable do you? And then down the list: family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, strangers, pollsters. Do you believe there is a significant number of shy voters who do not want to share they are voting for Donald Trump? So far, that's been in the 60s everywhere. Yeah, man. And then on tariffs,
I think I'll take it out because it just doesn't play much one way or the other in Arizona.
okay, we'll remove tariffs and we'll remove the USMCA, right?
Yep.
Okay, goodbye. And then that, I'll show you guys too. It'll run through a little assessment. I'll do that later. But okay, generally speaking, do you consider yourself a Republican, Democrat, Independent, or something else? Which best describes your political views? We got that. That's beautiful. Gender, age, which we will, on the back end, folks, we break down 18 to 24, 25 to 29. And the reason is we don't want that entire category targeted, quoted, being filled in by 18 to 24. Okay. We want to make sure that that is generally in line with past electorates. And we'll do that. All right. So which race, ethnicity best describes you? And then from there, we don't really need a Latino detail question. What were you saying before? We'll do this not about ancestry. We'll do this about
the degree of connection they are to immigration. So are they a first generation, second generation, third generation? Do they have family or friends that are first generation? Because what it is you have one group of Mexican-American voters that's very sensitive to immigration.
Yep.
And another that just flat out doesn't care or is even actually, quote unquote, conservative on immigration.
Right.
Depends on how close they themselves are personally to that issue, either due to their own legal status or their own friends or family. And what is about, depending on the state, like Pew asked that question, and it previewed back in 2016 that Trump was going to do double digits better among certain Mexican-American groups. And then that showed up in West Texas.
Yeah.
And
in
Maricopa.
Yeah.
Parts of New Mexico showed up. And so the media thinks every Mexican-American voter is an illegal immigrant who works for them. So
I know.
Mexican-American voter is not. And that there are many who have been here for generations. I mean, in New Mexico, even more so than Arizona, but you got some third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation, and they vote very differently. And you want to know, to get a representative sample within the Mexican-American vote, you want to know the difference between the immigration sensitive vote and the one that's actually immigration conservative, if they care at all, because they trend differently. And I have a hunch that Trump is doing even better amongst third generation or older or higher up Mexican-American voters in Arizona. And because if that's happening, if some of this other trend we're seeing with Hispanic voters in other groups in other states, if he at all is doing let's say just 5 points better, then the registration trend toward Democrats in Arizona because of the increasing Mexican-American population in the state doesn't mean anything. Because if you add, if the Mexican-American vote is 5% more of the vote, but of that 5%, almost only 1% of it's increasing the Democratic margin, Trump's fine because he's got a 3.5 point cushion in Arizona.
Right. And we should also ask, and I'm not seeing it here, but right after that one here, you know what? I think Texas had one. Let me see about us, sir. And I'm on another thing. Just give me one second.
Are they new residents?
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to word this, but
I don't know if you want to add this or not, but I'd be curious about maybe just make it by region.
How long have you lived in Texas?
Yeah, like how long have you lived in Arizona? And if you've moved in, I'd like to know where they moved from.
Oh, that's I was gonna say we could split this right here into 2 pages to give it a follow-up. Okay. And so yeah, that's what we'll do. Okay. And then we'll ask about this, then we'll ask the mover question, and then if they aren't obviously, third generation or more, then we'll ask where they came from. And let's do that. I'll even give them all 50 states to choose from, Robert. I'll give them all 50 states. And then
there's a big
other
difference.
after.
But yeah, my hunch is like I'm real curious what Midwestern retirees in Arizona
Me too.
as
Versus
opposed to California new movers. We may get
that's
two
right.
completely different kind of trends.
And it's going to make me wonder if I should have asked about regionally in California, Northern California, Southern California, but whatever. We'll do. Maybe that's work for another time, right? And then we'll do. What is your employment?
Politically incorrect, but you could tell them which way you're directing it. You could just make California California, and then you know.
Listen, labor union's probably not worth it in here.
Oh,
and,
Arizona.
There's teacher union issues, but it's not.
You'll end up with a bunch of public sector people, so it doesn't help.
It. Yeah. So highest level of education. We're still going to break this down nicely, just like that. Marital status, household income. We do it like this. There's a lot of different ways to do it. We do it like this because this way, when we do autopsies after exit polls are completed, we can compare them most closely to exit polls. Yep. Urban, suburban, and rural. That's good. We'll have to, in which region we can junk and just do county, because Arizona is so.
Maricopa.
Man. I mean, we could do
Pima, and then basically the rest.
Yeah. Oh, I'll ask. There's only what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 counties. We're going to get a nice distribution from each. We'll do, and I bet you there are just some areas in that we'll have to pull from. We'll have to call, is what I'm saying. There's probably just going to be some people that we'll have to call. And then from there, we're done. So in more specifically, in which county do you live? So we'll have to add the generational question. Let me add another one about how long question. How long have you lived in Texas? We'll do this. And then they're all required. This way the people know. I deleted a damn page, so it's going to take the spinning wheel of death. Let's just restart it. It'll do the spinning wheel of death if I don't. Come on. Let's add this. Let's see if it goes. There it is. How long? Let's do how long have you lived in Arizona, which is the textbook exit poll way of asking. We bold all of the questions for older people, okay? And we will do it and born, move to.
Yeah.
Born, move to. All right, move to Arizona. Born in Arizona. And then the next one we could say, did you come from a certain area? Which one? If not, you were born in Arizona. What's your generation? We could kind of do it like that. All right.
In fact, maybe what we could do is in the move to, rather than the exact state they moved to, maybe just ask them which state they were born in, because that will tell us more.
That's true. Yes. We could just say, right. Which state were you born in? That's right. That'll tell us more. This way we don't have to ask them the next one, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's remove this one. In which state were you born? That's it. That's it, Robert. And then don't worry, folks. You don't have to see me going through. I will go and add all these states after we're done with Inside the Numbers. In which state were you born? And then more specifically, which county do you live? That actually, I'm going to move this one up here, Robert. This one's going to get moved in front of urban. And this one's going to get, I'm trying to, let's see if this, there we go. And then, so this way, after urban, suburban, or rural, more specifically, in which state do you live? All right. All right, folks, that's it. That's the show for the day. And we'll put this together. We'll start this tonight because I got to write the IVR one. I got to get that application out there too. So the reason why I think I don't think we're going to reach many people, Robert, in Yavapai. I don't think we're going to meet many people in, it's just, it happens. It's just, I want to be ready in case I have to, right? So if Yuma, La Paz, I'm like, there's nobody there, right? And you need a sample from each. We're going to shoot for 1,000, and I'm going to block off Maricopa at a certain amount because I know it's going to, both Maricopa and Santa Cruz and Pima, I'm going to block off at a certain amount. And then those will be target. We're done. It's over. Some get oversampled and trickle in fine, but I don't want them to count as part of our overall 1,000 N number. And this will be good. So I'm stoked. This is good stuff. All right, folks. Don't forget to follow Robert on Twitter at Barnes_law. This was a special edition of Inside the Numbers today that ran over an hour more. But for those who have supported the Public Polling Project, we thank you for it. If you still need to or want to, you can find the links in the bottom of the YouTube description. All right. And we will be back tomorrow on Inside the Numbers at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll go over the financials of this puppy, what we've done, what we plan to do. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of insight, but one night is you should let it roll through the weekend, and then we'll have a much better idea. Got to get all those working class people on the weekends, by the way, is the best. It's our experience. That is the best time to get them. Try to call these people at 6:30 at night, man. They don't want to talk about it. They just don't give a damn. All right. All right. So again, follow Barnes on Twitter at Barnes_law. We're going to thank him for being that special guest today to go over Pennsylvania. And we will see you guys back at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. All the best, folks.
Adios.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for knives to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away.